You're
All 7 of them?
You're lost in
In the glory of it.
sorry.
She's just coming in the meeting. She's flying in.
She's optimistic.
So she'll miss the work session.
She's flying in this weather. She's optimistic.
That's what I thought. That is what I thought when I was.
Make it even, she's probably circling Wyoming.
Pretty good. What? Otherwise, all right, I guess we might as well start since I think this is who we're going to have.
One agenda item on the workshop session agenda this evening. It's a long-awaited discussion. We've talked about this for almost 12 months, but the board has been asking to have a dialogue on the issue of alleys and maintenance of our existing alleys. So Kurt's prepared a short presentation, PowerPoint with a couple of graphics. We have a short cover report, and then we'd be glad to engage in a dialogue and have whatever discussion the board would like to have, including a staff recommendation on what we think would be the best course of action. Start with Kurt.
Thank you, Scott. Good evening, Mayor and Board. My name is Kurt Kohr. I'm the Public Works Director.
I think your mic might be not working.
Just speak loud.
All right, I'll speak loud. My name is Kurt Kohr. I'm the Public Works Director. What we've tried to prepare for tonight is just some simple exhibits to show where we have alleys, what types of existing conditions are in those alleys, and open that kind of up to an overall discussion of options that we may want to discuss on how we handle our alleys moving forward, given some of the public comment we've received in the past. So the exhibit we have here up on the screen, Coal Creek, is towards the top of the screen, going left to right. The Caslin's on the right side of the exhibit. And then we've tried to show the property lines from our GIS. Maybe a little tough to see, but they're there. Basically, we have 3 colors describing the different types of alleys we have. We have alleys that are almost completely gravel or just the wheel paths have gravel, and those are shown in yellow. We have one alley that appears to have had some paving done to it, maybe 1 inch thick, some time ago, and that is in light blue. And then we have green shown in areas where alleys have either non-existent in that they're completely grass or are kept. They may have a slight wheel path but are more manicured in the way of a lawn. If I go to our second exhibit, the way I would describe those is the middle slide would be your gravel, or the middle picture would be the gravel. The left side would be one of the unimproved alleys, and then the right side is actually the paved alley. It's the light blue. Those are 3 conditions we have out there. Going back to our overall exhibit, options that have been discussed. Upgrade the alleys to some uniform standard, whatever that could be, whether it is a wheel path of gravel, all gravel, millings, pavement, whatever. 2, maintain the existing conditions as they are in each location. Or 3, in areas where there is no use currently, it's all grass, possibly vacate to residents. So we've come here tonight with no predetermined decision and want to discuss our options. Right now, given our budget and what we're proposing over the next few years, the current current pathway would be to maintain in existing conditions unless we receive different direction. So given that, I'll open it up to discussion and we can take it wherever it goes.
Okay, thanks. Questions from anybody? Chris? Do we have any feeling on the residents that back up to the alleys, how they feel about the way they should look? Whether they should be maintained the way they are, or whether they should be paved?
I don't feel that we have a representative community input. I have some input, and I think it's mixed. I don't have an overwhelming one way or the other.
Okay.
I would like to see that if it's at all possible, to get their input. There are a few homes, but I think it's important before we move on to get their feedback.
Okay.
Joe?
Kurt, which alleys have been problematic? We've been hearing about in the last year or two.
The alleys that I've heard about over the past year or two would be the alleys that are in the south original town, is what I call it, or south of Gold Creek. The alley in green just south of Douglas Street. Chillis, may I borrow your pencil? So,
Here, Kurt.
there we go. All right. So the alleyway in green, this is Douglas Street here, this is 2nd Avenue, this is the bridge kind of in the middle, 3rd Avenue. This alley here has been an alley in discussion. It was affected in this area by the roadway project. The slope that is used to enter the alley was steepened and a large storm inlet was placed in that area. It has essentially eliminated access to that alley from that project. Children's Park is in the middle here, and there is no vehicular access here. There are bollards on either end that block that. And then the alley, which we show a portion of at the very bottom in yellow, is a mixed gravel and grass alley, and I've heard concerns regarding drainage in that alley. Storm drainage or snowmelt drainage, draining from our alley into properties or from other properties into the alley and then into properties. And so that is what I've heard about alleys.
Is that drainage problem something that became worse after we did the work on the south side?
Are you referring to the area in yellow?
Yeah. Were you talking about drainage problems?
My understanding of the drainage problems there, I don't believe became better or worse from the road project.
Worse.
Okay.
Worse?
I live in that. That's what we're talking about.
And do you have any idea historically how the different alleys got in the different stages of development? Was that residents choosing to use it and do something or versus others not? Or any idea?
I have no historical knowledge on the alleys. Yeah, most of the historical knowledge, we have nothing in our public works files. I think most of it's in the community, whatever historical knowledge is there on the alleys.
Deborah?
I wanted to find out, are these all legal right-of-ways, alleys?
All platted, yes.
All of them? Okay.
Yes. In fact, our report indicated there are a couple that aren't even shown here because they've been encroached upon,
By,
the adjoining property owners.
What's the likelihood of just paving all of them and making them all consistent and then just maintaining the pavement from year to year? I know there's an expense to that. Is that a possibility?
Yeah, I mean, that is a possibility. It's a budgetary consideration and a maintenance consideration beyond that.
Is that reasonable, Scott? Could that happen?
You have a 33-mile road network. You got, in this instance, a little over a mile, almost a mile and a quarter worth of right-of-way, depending on your standard. And I was going to make the comment earlier when they said, well, let's turn this over to the residents. Of course. If you're going to do it, I want the best. I want concrete, I want drainage, and you're talking about roughly $1 million to build more than a mile of paved surface. If you're talking about using recycled asphalt that comes off of our street, some of our street projects, it's going to be a significantly lower sum. So I think I wouldn't set the bar so high or create an expectation that says, we'll do whatever you want.
Right.
Because I think it's probably an unfulfillable goal.
Okay. Can we ask questions about the comments made last meeting from Suzanne? Went out and met with Suzanne, and she showed us the area. And is it, Paul, I realized last year was a heavy rainy season, or this year was. That possibly could have been the reason for the increase in flooding in their yards and the alley and all that. But is it possible that we should have drains in there so that the flooding doesn't happen down that alley and into their yards?
You could have a drain in there to collect what water is in the alley.
Because I didn't see any drains at all where that new road work was done. And I'm wondering if just the way it was constructed may have increased the water flow into the yards, or if it was just because of the rainy season. But what's the possibility of having the contractor come out and look at it and say, yeah, we probably should have put drains in, it's warranted, let's go ahead and put that in?
Well, I don't, so the area in question is probably this area in the yellow where drainage problems happen. I believe Mr. Chavez's residence is right in this area, am I correct?
Yes.
And that's, I believe, is the residence in question that has the most of the drainage issues. You know, an inlet could possibly be placed in this area.
Okay.
However, that that was not a part of the scope of the road project.
Yeah, I'd be saying, though, it would go where the road was done, in the road, to prevent it from even going to the alley before it even reached it. Now, the other thing was when that gets real wet there, as I understand it, it gets very muddy and rutted. So that would be another reason that I'd say we should really try and pave it.
Sure. Yeah, I don't believe, I'm not there to personally witness every storm.
Right.
From my observations is I think the road carries most of its drainage to inlets that were placed in this area and in this area. And I think
Third and
most of
Douglas.
the drainage, I'm not going to say all, is from just internal, the lots, the platted lots in that area. And I'm not saying there's not a problem, I just don't feel the road project exacerbated what's there.
Okay.
Because, Deborah,
Oh, go ahead. You were
Well,
going to say something?
my understanding, well, I think I remember this correctly, is that there's square, or whatever the term of the curb is. I know I can never remember whatever that is, but you know, it's not the California rolling curb or whatever that other version is. On the other side of, on the south side, I think deflects most of the water that's coming down the street there, and then it goes down the streets on Second and Third.
Yes, there's
And I-
just kind of a high point in this area, and then it drains to the west, and then comes to the north, and then or it drains to the east and comes to the north.
That's what it looks like to me. So I can't see how the road project, and that's at an elevation, so the grade is going from south to north there. So I don't see how the street project could have done anything to that area
Mayor,
specifically.
If I might lend a little bit of a different perspective, that the road that curves around it, is that Second?
Right here?
Follow it around the bend over
Rail.
the other way, from the bottom,
From the,
yeah.
so I'm going to start there. Stay right there?
Right, and
Yes.
go over and connect the roads.
Over to the right?
Yes, to the right.
Okay.
Okay. That road that goes from west to east, your right is banked, and it deflects water to the north. However, there is no drainage that I saw along that entire interior curbing.
That's true.
At
So
that point,
as-
I'm correct. No, when you say drainage, no inlets.
No inlets, correct.
Nothing to catch the
Right.
water.
Gutter.
So, not being there during a rainstorm, but, trying to postulate, it appeared to me that if there is no inlet of any kind there, that in a heavy rainstorm, that water might well go into yards at that point, or sort of flow up driveways, or otherwise enter the lots
Sure.
and pool.
That is a
So I was a bit perplexed as to why no inlets were put in if we did major road repair or road updating.
You know, I can't speak for so when we do drainage design, there's a 5-year storm, a 10-year storm, 50, 100, you pick a certain design storm. I would have to review what design storm was used in this area, but it is common practice to, in Colorado, space inlets broadly apart, and you convey that water in your flow line in that curve. And so, there are inlets right here, and this water does come around and get into those. This water comes around and flows for a period of time. I believe this is probably okay. Other areas I would have to, again, review and make sure.
But in
What
that,
you say is a valid point. In a certain monsoon-type storm, water could exit the right-of-way into the properties. It may.
so there's only the one inlet in that?
There's two. There's an inlet here and here, and there's an inlet here and here, and I believe there's an inlet
In the alley at Douglas.
in the
Yeah.
alley
And at
right
Third
there.
and
Yeah.
Douglas.
Yeah.
That's where one was added.
Yeah.
There's nothing on the south edge or on that west road there?
Not currently.
Okay.
That didn't used to be paved at all.
This was previously like a cinder millings type surface.
Right.
Is it
So,
possible-
so water would have, at that time, water would go straight down the hill. I mean, off Arsenal or whatever the property is over there, straight down that hill, across that gravel, and then straight into the yards from there. So I think that it's actually with the square curve, or once again, the term that I'm lacking on right now.
B612.
E612. I knew there was a term for this. I think that actually the deflection from there is actually better now.
It should be. It should be from historical conditions.
But, I mean, it doesn't, if there was internal drainage problems, obviously the road project didn't do anything to that because it wasn't designed for that.
Correct. And this is something, I mean, I don't want to invalidate anyone's discussion on this topic, and this is something where if we felt this was a priority, we can certainly do some sort of survey and define where water may or may not be entering properties. We can work with those residents.
One more question. I know this is about alleys, but this is kind of important. In this section right here, is it possible that by putting the pavement in there, it allows the water to run more efficiently? And when it gets there, there's a curb there, but then I think it opens up to a driveway to go down the alley.
There's curb cuts here.
And then so a lot of water runs here. That's the first path where there's no resistance, so boom, it goes down there. So I'm wondering if there possibly could be a drain there.
Well, so where the yellow line is roughly, I believe, around a high point. I don't feel that there's enough water developing here that it's going into this driveway. Just based off
That
my
alley.
Kurt, you're missing about 6 houses from that yellow line.
Yeah, this is a part.
Yeah.
You know, what I can't speak for is what happens when it gets around the curve. I can't guarantee, but I don't. And I'm just going off field observations.
I can tell you. You drive right past it.
Yeah, why don't we finish board questions, and I think we got plenty of time to have any public comments, so. Any other questions about this?
So are any of the other alleys in town, have any of the others been problematic to our knowledge?
Not to my knowledge.
I can tell you, the one where the recycling area was, which I think is in blue, if I remember
Yes.
the location,
Yes.
that's been a problem for sure. Some of it just had to do with the recycling thing, and it was never brought up at the alley. People were encroaching onto the alleys in that area, and I think it was quite problematic, actually, to use it from time to time. So,
One of the reasons why we have the problem in Sagamore is because we didn't have the drains there, so now they're putting the drains so that it actually drains out. So is this kind of something similar? Something different?
As we talked about with the Sagamore problem, we probably have 24 of those throughout town. You're dealing with the squeaky wheel tonight.
yeah.
Not the worst, certainly not the only one, the loudest one. And we all, I think, recognized that when we came up with a retrofit to fix it.
Just about anything on the north side of the road potentially is a problem.
Anything on the south side, right, facing north on the
Yeah.
south side of
Yeah.
the streets in Colorado. not
Yeah,
even
it's
South
an
Sudan,
ongoing
is an issue.
challenge. Every community,
Yeah.
not specific to us.
So do you have any idea how many are functional? I mean, obviously there's a vacated alley in there, sort of on Third, I guess, behind Suzanne's house.
So third, right here.
Other
No,
direction,
one more.
no.
Over, no, you're in the right area. Just go
West.
to
You
the
gotta
west.
go west a little bit.
Yeah, right.
Right there.
Okay.
So there was there was an alley there that was vacated.
Did we, was it officially vacated or just
I think so.
taken
but-
over?
And wasn't
Okay.
there, where was the bridge?
Right, either, there's a bridge here and.
Right, there was a third
There's
alley.
a right-of-way there.
I mean, I suspect that that alley was vacated because nobody was using it, so why have an official alley? But I guess I'm getting at the point is how many of these alleys do people use for getting into garages or whatever access? Do you have any idea? Do all of them use that function?
No.
Have that function?
We drove it all last week, and we
Okay.
found at least 3 of those alleys that have that service no properties. Nobody has a driveway, nobody has a garage, nobody uses it for access.
And do you recollect off the top of your head which ones those are? Or?
This
That
is one.
That's the most pristine.
Yeah.
It looks like the extension of a yard.
Uh-huh.
It's had so little activity, it looks like.
This one, I don't think there's a garage maybe. at the-
And then that half.
Oh, yeah, I just ran on that one last Saturday.
Okay. I mean, I guess where I'm coming from is that if there's a piece of concrete or gravel or whatever that serves no purpose except it's platted, we should probably get rid of it and give it to the neighbors so they can extend their yards if they want to. I think that would solve some issues at least.
Maybe 3 of the 12 segments.
It's something that we don't need for any purpose.
Right. So, Deborah.
Originally, this this area was designed to have alleys, isn't that correct?
As far as the way it was platted?
Yes.
Yes.
So I guess I would like to find out how residents feel in that area, whether they would like to continue seeing that continuity and not get rid of some and keep others. And I don't know if you can set up a meeting with them and discuss that, have that be one of the questions or things you need to know. Because it seems to me that how it was originally platted and meant to look is kind of the contentious part of some of the improvements that we've been making over the years, in my opinion. That some want changes and some don't. You know, I'm thinking of Coal Creek, for example, that whole street. Coal Creek Drive has changed dramatically from what it was. And either we make original town the way it was meant to be, or we change it entirely. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
So I'd like to just hear from the residents and see what they think, especially about the alleys.
Okay.
Chris?
I'm sure you guys all read Gladys's note. So there's the 2 concerns that I was thinking about as well, and that was fire and emergency access, but also public utility access. So if we were to get rid of the alleys completely, vacate them, what's going to be the ramifications on down the road?
We would have to work with the public utilities to make sure that, those are accessible however they may need to be. It's a discussion that needs to be had.
That's the broader issue of vacation, and that was one sentence or one paragraph out of our cover report. If there's an existing utility, we'll need to maintain an easement, even though the property control or ownership of the property could be transferred to the adjoining property owners. First of all, the suggestion was only in instances where nobody takes access. If anybody has access off of it, we can't abandon it. You can't shut them out of their garages. But in those few instances where there is no access, and a majority, plurality, or unanimity say, we'll take it. Let's give it to them. That was the suggestion in those 3 instances where nobody takes access. But in the other 9, that's not even an option. You can't do it.
Then based on that, I say that you make it uniform, consistent, and you don't eliminate any alleyways.
Then in that instance, it's deciding on the design standard. Do you want concrete alleys, which look like effectively streets, whether they're 10 feet, 15 feet, or 20 feet wide? Do you want them to be reused asphalt, like the alley behind the old fire station? Or maintain what exists, which was what our recommendation was. If it's currently asphalt, we'll keep it asphalt. If it's currently gravel, we'll keep it gravel. If it's currently dirt and ruts, we can grade it once or twice a year. That was the premise behind maintaining the existing condition. Uniform standard, what each standard that exists today, those were the options that we were talking
Well,
about.
then that all depends on what the goal is for those alleys, as how they're being used. If you drive down one, I can tell you when it's muddy, I can't drive my car down one that is gravel because I tried that and I just sunk. So if your goal is to be able to drive it in some fashion at some point, then they have to be paved in some way.
And they also have to drain properly.
And that would be number one.
It's a touchy subject. I mean, even when you start going to a uniform standard, I'd anticipate we run into some tricky property issues or code issues as well, where properties have developed or butted to it in some way or another. Sorry, I think the whole thing is a tricky subject. You know, there are obviously alleys platted, some used, some not. Some are manicured, some not. And if you go to a uniform standard, you may interfere with the way people are used to using those alleys, even though the goal may be usability. A uniform standard may create code conflicts or create alleys where there may be personal use.
I guess, I don't know, if I would live there, I can't imagine that I would want one that's gravel or grass. I would want it paved. I can't even imagine why you would not want it paved. Is there a possible reason why you would not?
Depends on who's paying the bill. If somebody else is paying the bill, you probably want it paved.
If you don't want people.
That issue is what Chris was getting to. Do you want to add 1.25 miles to your paved street network?
Yeah, but it doesn't have to be, you know, the Rolls Royce. It can be
That's
something more attainable.
What is the uniform standard? Some people probably don't want easy access from anybody. And
So
upgrading it would improve. It's hard. The question, what do they want, is the key question.
Well,
a key question.
Also, it is city or it's town alleyways, right? The town owns the alleyways, correct?
correct.
Okay, well,
I'll give you an analogy.
that is the operative word.
I'll
right
give you an
there.
analogy. Most of our neighborhoods have streetlights. There are some that don't. If a neighborhood approached the town and said, we want streetlights, do you feel obligated to provide them? Or to say, we can be the conduit to providing them. You've never had them. It wasn't a pre-existing condition. If you want them, you're going to pay for them. We'll provide them for you, but you're going to pay for it. That's the issue.
Elio?
Yeah. I guess I'd like to address Trustee Williams's thoughts about surveying. To me, the more information we have, the better off we are. We don't have to act upon that information, but it's good to have. But honestly, I cannot conceive that you will have unanimity. You can. I don't care if you did that in Rock Creek. I don't care if you did it in Original Town or Sagamore. People are individuals, and they have a mind of their own, and they think differently. This is, we're not in the Soviet Union. We're not forced to think alike. Everybody can think on their own. So I think if you were to poll 100 people, you're not going to get unanimity. You're not even going to get a plurality, honestly. You're going to get not 100 different answers, but you're going to get a diverse group of answers. So to me, it's just information. Should we get possibly get 80% of that area to agree on something, that'd be great, but I don't foresee it, I don't expect it.
I guess,
So-
yeah, I have one feeling, and that is, I think inadvertently we changed the character of the south side of town quite a bit with our last project, and I'd hate to change the character of the town in a way that the residents don't want it, if we can figure out what they want.
Let's see, I have one other question. So the alleyways going east to west there, they continue, don't they, past first, second, third, fourth?
Yes.
Some of it's going to be a path.
I mean, but Mayor, I would agree with those three unique alleys that can be vacated, I would go ahead and give them to the residents so they can expand their backyard.
I mean, I can't imagine.
Especially-
Go ahead, I'm sorry.
Well, my biggest question had to do really with emergency vehicle access. And if you're saying that we need to have an easement somehow, if that's taken care of, then I wouldn't have any problem with those three alleys anyway.
I mean, that's not an uncommon thing where power and utilities would go down somebody's lot line
Right.
without an alleyway there, and Excel has an easement so they can trim branches or whatever so they can get
Correct.
to the
Right,
power.
right, right.
But in those instances, would somebody's decision to agree to vacation affect the neighbor's throughway?
Good.
So to the extent it does, there's got to be block-wide agreement, because if somebody wants to go through, and that's the current use, the guy in the middle, we can't vacate.
It's a slippery.
It would have to be a full block stretch,
Right.
first of all. And then the
If-
suggestion was, is it a majority of those that abut that decide? Is it unanimity amongst all of those that
Right.
abut? That's your decision.
I mean, if one block residents, they all agree, that makes it easy, obviously.
Right.
But are you saying beyond the one block, like the block next to it?
No.
No, just before that?
Because they'd have a street to,
Right.
Okay,
Right.
okay.
Because I can imagine that, things past, I'm sorry, is that fourth? My counting is past
Fourth is right
Yeah,
here.
so to the west of Fourth, I can't imagine that people would want us to go through there with a grader and take out things that are on that property. Because, at least from here, I can see that there's structures and or
Right.
items in those alleyways right now.
Is there adverse possession rules there? Is that right, adverse possession?
Laws.
That's the phrase.
got to find a good property lawyer.
So, I mean, I think the town right now would have the right to go in there and tell people to take them out of their alleyways, but I can't imagine, I mean, I don't think, well, the most recent design for Remington, and who knows if they're ever coming forward, but it doesn't have any alleys, so they don't actually even connect anything to the west there. So, well, it's, currently we just turned a blind eye or whatever. Why don't we officially turn a blind eye and just give them away so we don't, it's never an issue for us in the future. So, I mean, because if we have uniformity, then we say, well, we're going to go through the grader and we're going to put asphalt through those areas, and I can't see how that would be productive
Or well received necessarily.
or well received. So, and the other problem is also, so Children's Park there and to the north, that's grass right now, as far as I can tell, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
It is grass.
And so I can't imagine going in there and putting asphalt in. So,
It's grass up to that, the
up to
northern
Children's Park,
border,
I think, yeah.
but the southern edge there.
But the southern edge is not.
From Children's Park South.
So I guess I would query the people on the, because I don't think people are driving down that grass. As far as I can tell, I never see
No.
tire tracks down there. And you can't now, but
It's too steep.
even before that.
Sorry, after resolving Mr. McLaren's problem, nobody uses access north of Children's Park between 2nd and 3rd.
Right. So that would be another area where
That's one of the three.
that would seem like that would make sense too. So, and then dealing with whatever Martinez one on the south side. I mean, so we'd have like a partial vacation. So I mean, you can't even. So whatever. I'm not sure that we can have. I guess where I'm getting at, I don't think we can have uniformity because so many things are different in the original town. Elia.
Could we listen to the residents a little bit since there's some time left?
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure that the board had all the issues that they wanted to address first. So, sounds like they do. Okay.
I'm Ted Chavis. I live at 401 South 2nd Superior. Can I borrow your pointer? I'm not a good speaker here, so bear with me here. What do I do? Oh, there you go. This alleyway that you're just now talking about, Randall's correct, but one thing is the person that lives in this property right here does use that alley. They four-wheel drive right now out there. So she does use that. Her name is Rhonda Hacker. She won't come down and speak to you guys. There's a lot of issues there, but she does use that. This property right here,
Do we have a better?
this property right here is a rental property right now, so there's no say there. There's people coming in and out of that property every 6-8 months. So there's not really a say on if they're using that alley or not. But this alley can't be used because people don't want to drive down this portion here. You can't get to it from Children's Park here because they'd have to come through here. We can't do that.
Right.
So that's the problem with this alley. Will it be used if it was fixed for it? Yes, it would. And that's the feed I'm getting back from the people over there. This house right here was my aunt's house. And right in this area, they want access to their backyard, but they don't have a vehicle to get back there. Now, my question to you guys is, who maintains these alleys? If it belongs to the city, who's supposed to maintain that? Is it the homeowner? Because I do. I've taken care of this whole entire alley here, up until we had a porta potty put right here in Children's Park. That's what caused our ruts in here. But it used to be all grass. Couldn't we still get back there? Yes. It wasn't like where Forshie and I lived. We didn't drive that all the time. So it stayed grass. We maintained it. Or I should say I did. She trimmed her grass along the fence there. But this was all cut by me. Now the houses that you're missing coming this way, yes, they use it. There's a lady who's my aunt. She lives at 408 3rd. She has a handicapped student or child. That she can't even get out this alley. That was the new project, the road project. And she complained to John, I can't think of his last name before you, about this alley that's messing her handicap van up, getting her kid out in and out. That's her main access to her garage. The water problem we're having used to be from the hill. You were absolutely right. It came down that hill. And then we put this street in, and it's running off. But the problem we got is the house that lives right here, that's on the corner, has all their roof water come down, drains right into the alley. That's what runs down here. Children's Park right here has those little huts that are sitting there. They're sitting 2 feet above ground, which all the water piles up right here. So it flows into my backyard, which I opened up a spot in the gate for my fence to flow into the park. But that's where the water's coming from. It's not so much it's coming off the hill anymore. It's not so much that it's just the water that's on the houses now that are flooding us out in that alley. Now for usage, I mean, I don't think the town of Superior, I know a lot of these people would want to see their alleys go away, but I think they would like to see them maintained. I don't know who maintains the alleys as far as weeds go, other than mine. I could tell you I don't do this alley. I don't see anybody do that alley. But they have no access to, why worry about it? That's why you see that alley not being used. The other alley, yes, it's definitely. You look up in this alley where the Sharps live up here, they use that alley all the time. But who maintains it as far as the grass growing? We don't know, but I do know that homeowners will go out there every now and then and weed eat it and stuff. But what I get at is, you know, we're so worried about Forshie over here, and I'm sorry, I'm not on TV, am I?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Sorry, Forshie. But she complains about the weeds right here, and the town goes and cuts them. What about the rest of Superior? That's what we're seeing in the town of Superior. We want to see it kept original. We don't want to see pavement in the alleys. Well, maybe I don't, but Joe Smoke down on the other side might. I want to see the way it used to be, which was grass. I think Scott's hitting it on the button. Why put more money out there? Let's fix the drainage problem. That could be done by grading it. Maybe some recycled asphalt. But it doesn't mean we've got to bring it all in and rip it all out and put asphalt or concrete and curbs and gutters. Let's fix the drainage first. Because that's the whole issue that's going on this side. Now, I guarantee once that hill starts here in 10 years, as soon as that ditch gets filled in, that water's going to come back into the road. You're back to another problem. I don't know if you guys were on the board at that time when they cut the ditch on the other side of the road. That works great. But it left a pond down on the side down there, which I think is ugly. But water runs down there, which is great. But that ditch is going to fill in. The dirt's going to keep coming down. So that's the problem with this alley right here. Now, the porta potty situation in this whole ordeal, it's sitting 15 feet away from my house right now. There's no house in this corner, and there's nothing but 2 trees, 3 trees sitting right here that you can put a porta potty in. I mean, I don't even mind if you put it right back where it was. But we got to fix the alley up because they're causing the ruts. That truck coming in caused all those ruts in that alley.
It's too big a truck.
Well, it's the smallest truck they got. But yes, it's too heavy of a truck. They can't bring anything smaller in. So I feel for Western on that. But still, it's the point of it went down. And I'm talking, it went down a good 12. I'm the one that's been filling those ruts back in. You know, I find dirt somewhere, I'll go in and fill those alleys. I mean, I've heard about that a little bit on that. You know, but really, if you guys are thinking about taking alleys away and giving it to the landowner, I don't think this is going to happen because I know Ed Sharp's not going to take his fence down and move it over 10 feet. I mean, you're talking about moving fences, you're talking about, they're going to leave it the way it is. Now it's going to be their responsibility to take care of, and now the code enforcer is going to go through there and say, well, this isn't taken care of. Right now, it's left alone. That's why you don't see people here, because they don't want to mess up the old things that's there. You know, leave it alone. Just, that's what they're thinking. If we don't go, they'll leave it alone. But that's what happened to the south side. Me and my family didn't speak. Yeah, our street got narrow. We're living with it. We don't complain. We're living with it. Can we use rolled up curbs? That would have been 100% better than those 6-inch curbs. Our driveway's still a total mess. They say you're going to keep coming back and fix it. That hasn't been approached yet. But we're not coming down here and complaining. We just want to see someone come up and talk to us. My parents lived here all their lives. They're not going to come talk to you guys. They'll fix it. Just leave it alone. They'll do it. Well, we got to get someone down there to look at it and talk to us and see how it's going. But I'm telling you, if you take these alleys away, I think your residents are going to be pretty upset. As far as fixing them, I'm not saying put asphalt, concrete in them. Maybe that's the way they would want to go. I don't know. I just know I can speak for this alley right here. I would like to see the drainage taken care of and maybe some gravel put down and left alone. Keep the heavy trucks off of it. You know, that's what I'm looking at. But I can guarantee you that last year, this whole back portion of my yard was totally flooded out. And so I popped a hole into the park and ran it all into the park. And that's just coming from the rooftops. My dad's yard gets flooded out. He lives over here next to me. He gets flooded from this portion. It goes through his fence into my yard. I had to build a berm in here so it wouldn't go closer to my house. I mean, we adapted to our water issue. But I think if we're going to do this, let's really look at it and come down and speak to us and see what we got going on and see what we're moving in and out of those alleys. I think you guys would get a better bird's eye view of it, coming and looking and talking to us and not just force you. And that's outside Superior. That's why Rhonda doesn't come down here and talk to you guys. She just won't do it. Gina, she's been down here a couple times. She's been looking for her driveway to get fixed. She's called several times. No one calls her back. That's why they don't come down here. But I am speaking for my parents, my uncle, my aunt that lives on the other side, and my other uncle, that this alley is very important to us, very important. And especially for my aunt with the handicapped kid. That alley's, it's his life. She can't get his wheelchair from the front to the back in a rainstorm. So that's something we need to look at right now. But you guys were, you guys got a lot of good questions, and you're asking Kurt. He won't have the answers like the residents. Come visit us. We don't fight. Take a drive through there, knock on our door. I know two of you know where I live. So come see us and talk to us, and we'll fit you in. We're not trying to be jerks about this. We don't want to be jerks. We don't want to see the city change either. But if it does, we're willing to live with it. You know, I thank Forshy and I thank George for fighting for this town. I know they give you a hard time. I know they do. But sometimes they make a lot of sense. But it's us as residents who don't fight. You know, I wish I could get this room filled up for you. They just won't do it because they're afraid.
Okay, maybe,
Thank you.
maybe some more comment from anybody?
Good evening, board, whatever, work session. I'm fully aware of what goes on in this whole town. I'm fully aware we put a big culvert in at the south end of that green spot where Teddy's talking about, and run a pipe all the way down to 2nd Avenue and into the creek. Why can't you move that pipe 20 feet to the south and grade your alley according to your street? Put a drain across where the park is, a pipe, a 12-inch pipe or something, or nothing huge, so it'll drain from his alley down to your drain that you put in down there. There's no way for it to go. Like he said, come down there and we can explain that to you. We know what goes on here.
George, would you mind showing us what you mean on the map? Could you walk up there and show us what you mean?
I think I can describe it. So on the...
Your drainage system that you put in is right here, next to the street. And the reason it is, they moved the street. You can't get in now. So if you take a track hole in there and dig back this way 20 feet, put a 20-foot extension and slide your box back in the alley. Then you can make a grade from the box to the street. You can get in and out of there. These people would all have access to it if they use it or they don't use it. It's their privilege to use it. If they want to tear their fence down and get in there, they got to have access to it. Not give it away, not make them, go away. Fix it. Put a culvert in here. Don't drain it. This rooftop water is coming off of here. Simple. Now, in the original town up here, used to be all culverts across the alleys. In fact, if you go over on 3rd Avenue between Coal Creek and William Street, that alley's got a drain on the west side. If that's not cleaned out, going to be cleaned out on that side, where you get any amount of water that comes down through there, Mr. Melvin's going to be flooded out. You people won't know nothing about culverts. Everyone in the alleys had a culvert in at one time. Well, we had to change all this so the water flows this way. In pans. We all voted on pans. We didn't vote on curves, we voted on pans. But you don't pay no attention to what we got to say. I don't know if you don't understand or what. We come down and we talk, we know what we're talking about. That is a disgrace the way they put that in down there. And 2 years we've been fix the alley. We don't see any way we can get it done.
Well, it's all...
Poor man's gravel in front of his driveway, I'm telling you. Year and a half, they said, we're going to put rock in there. Ain't done it yet. Fix it for him. We relax on a lot of things. I think it's about time we start acting and doing things that we say we're going to do, period. Come and talk to people and get it done.
Okay, thanks. I guess my only thinking about this, and if there's any more public comment, great, but the problem is that what we're getting into here is the squeaky wheel issue where, people come down and say, well, we want gravel, but does that mean that the other alleyways we're not going to do anything with? I mean, it's not a very good position to be in, that, people that get stuff done are the people that come down and comment. It'd be much better to have some sort of plan. I mean, many communities, essentially they turn a blind eye, and if you want to do alleyway improvements, you have a special alley district or whatever that's called, so you raise taxes on those properties to maintain the alleyways. I don't think that's kind of what we're anticipating here. Mr. Randall has your hand raised.
Our suggestion was to avoid the issue of creating an entirely new subcategory within our infrastructure system of alley construction, alley maintenance. Our suggestion was option 2, which is to maintain the current condition. If it's asphalt, we'll keep it asphalt. If it's gravel, we'll keep it gravel. If it's dirt with ruts and grass, we'll keep it that way. Now, if that means we rent a blade once a year, twice a year, or once every 2 years, to go in and level the gravel, put more down, to level the ruts, if whatever the existing condition is, we're suggesting that be the standard, not creating a whole new standard, and not creating a uniform standard. We did suggest that in those instances, those limited, those 2 or 3 instances where there's nobody that uses it, if they wanted it, and then the board has to decide, is it 51%, is it 80%, or is it 100%? If they don't want it, we'll give it to them, and just take it out of our inventory and list of asset and list of properties. That's where we were going. The other thing that we heard here was you'd like to find out what everybody thinks. So if you'd like, we could put together a survey instrument, send it to every property owner, not resident, every property owner within the area that's described that has access to an adjacent alley, and with a list of these options. But my concern with it at first was not just saying, you tell us what you want, we're going to do it.
That's not
Because
what I meant.
okay, because if it's $1 million fix, I don't know that we're in a position to do $1 million fix.
No.
But we'll prepare an instrument, shoot it around for some feedback, get it out, and get it out into the neighborhoods, and share with you what we learned.
Yeah, just gather the information more than anything.
I think that'd be helpful. The problem is that these alleyways are 100 years old or whatever when these things were platted, and at times I'm sure that I wasn't here, but the streets were gravel then and dirt then, and I'm sure the alleyways were gravel and dirt then as well. So, and then over the course of time, nothing changed, and people would encroach or whatever, grass would grow or they wouldn't use it. So now we're left with this unplanned situation where we have to. I mean, I guess one choice would be do nothing about it, but that doesn't seem very doesn't seem like the right strategy, at least in my mind.
Okay. If you're comfortable with those next steps, I'm guessing maybe 4 to 6 weeks when we can have some feedback for you.
I think that would be helpful.
We were also going to check with utilities too, though, as part of that exercise, and see what
utilities are there?
Yeah, what has to,
We should be able to figure out what utilities are there.
Just by driving.
Yeah.
We know. As an example, the one between 2nd and 3rd north of Children's Park does have power poles. We've had conversations with Excel about that. They need to maintain access, an easement through there. That doesn't mean we couldn't vacate the alley.
Okay. Thanks. Thank you. Thank you for holding this discussion. I know that we didn't solve anything in particular, but it's a good discussion to have.
Said you wanted to have the first one at 35,000 feet, then we'll have the next one at maybe
Yes, there we go.
1,000.
We'll start landing. Why don't we move on to item number 3 there?
Very briefly, your agenda for the next meeting, as it stands today, we expect that we will have construction bids for the resurfacing of Jasper. Jasper is the only street south of Colton that did not get resurfaced last year, and it didn't. We pulled it from the program because we were experiencing some sewer issues. We've since televised all the sewers. Our sewers are okay. There are a couple of spots we're going to be doing some spot repairs. We wanted to give the residents that have had some sewer issues, some crushed sewer pipe, the opportunity to fix those before we go in there and repave the street. Kurt's been meeting with those individual property owners to be able to say, you have a problem, you had a problem. A couple of them have already been fixed. A couple more we think should be fixed, and we're giving them that opportunity to fix them. But this is our last residential street south of Colton. Rock Creek Trail extension. North side of the Key Equipment Building, just at the top of the hill. This will provide an east-west trail connection from Rock Creek Parkway in McCaslin around the Key Bank Building to access the Boulder County's new north-south trail that will be going from Town Hall down to the Colton Trailhead. So they've got the big trail. We're providing a few hundred feet, and we needed a revised easement from Key the property owner of Key to get the connection from McCaslin to the west. Model traffic code is something that the town attorney has prepared. The state has adopted a new code. We're currently reviewing it. Are there any modifications, local modifications that we might want to make? But I would expect that that'll be an action item for the next 2 meetings. First reading at the next meeting, subsequent second reading at the following meeting. We have been making some progress on the Centro lease. We got a revised lease from them today for the Boulder County Sheriff Substation. I have not had a chance to get through it. I got it about 5:30 tonight, but we're making progress and hoping that we're keeping that on the look ahead as an action item so that we can get them moved out of the fire station number 5. You will also have a public hearing and an ordinance on the Resolute property, Metropolitan District. You received the public presentation at last workshop 2 weeks ago. That's the supplemental taxing district they want to impose upon themselves for many of their public improvements. And then we have 3 items that have been scheduled for the work session. The annual report from the Sheriff's Office, opportunity to see our new Sergeant Chamberlain, how well he can sing and dance. We do have a 15-minute meeting scheduled, the 5th of our 5 with our advisory groups. This one will be with RCAC. And one of the board's goals, which we had scheduled for July, and it's got pushed back a little bit, a short presentation on the staff development plan, which is the training initiatives that we have for our by department for all town employees.
Great, thanks.
Can I ask one question?
Certainly.
On the public hearing on the Resolute Special District, there is no vote coming forward, correct? That's just a public hearing?
Public hearing and an ordinance.
And an ordinance?
Yes. Now, the board doesn't have to take action on it, but, I mean, if you said we want 2 more weeks, we want to solicit additional input, some good questions and comments were raised, but it was our expectation that, our plan, that we would schedule the public hearing and the ordinance, and it's only 1 reading on that ordinance, isn't it, Phyllis? There's a 2.
I was thinking it was going to be 2. We usually do 2 unless we want to do it by emergency.
No reason to do emergency. It's 2 readings, you won't. It'll be.
Okay.
Correct?
Okay. Anything else about the agenda items? Okay. Do you want to talk about any of the things on the digest?
Under report.
In case there's any questions.
Reminder for everybody, both the board and the public, that the next 2 off Monday nights, the board will be meeting to review Chapter 16, the Land Use Code and Zoning Ordinance. So on August 16th and August 30th, the 3rd and the 5th Monday of the month, the board will be reviewing the Land Use Code. Likewise, starting in September, the board has scheduled 2 special work sessions, one for Tuesday, September 7th, followed by Monday, September 20th, at which the board will begin its review, and the Finance Committee will begin its review of the proposed budget for 2011.
That is the Finance Committee then that does that?
Finance Committee and Committee of the Whole.
Right, I knew
Yes.
that. When I was looking at the look ahead, it looked like it was for everybody, for the entire board.
We've scheduled both. It's officially Finance Committee, but we've also scheduled it as a Committee of the Whole for anybody that is interested in showing up.
All right.
An aside, I know the mayor's taking great interest in this. The governor's announcement last week, along with Lance Armstrong, about the idea of bringing professional racing back to Colorado.
That's really exciting.
I wanted to kick somebody to say, you're a year late. We did it already.
You're late.
But they're not talking about
250K
taking
short.
away our race or anything. They're not
Well,
talking about
No, it's multiple legs of a, you know. so-
7-day.
Right.
It's in August.
And this is probably going to be one of the legs. But the idea was, we were at the press conference. We've already arranged a meeting with Mr. Eisner, who is envisioned to probably be the race director for the entire 7-day event, to make sure that Superior is represented and the Morgul is one of those legs in next year's event. My hunch means we don't have a Memorial Day event, because they've already picked a 7-day stretch in August. We can accommodate that. But if the professionals, the worldwide professionals, are going to come to the 7-day Colorado tour to Colorado, we want to be part of that.
I read with some interest that they were planning to issue RFPs to communities, and that kind of...
They were asking communities to submit RFPs to be hosts. Our initial conversations with Mr. Eisner on the Capitol lawn last Wednesday was, Superior should not get into that bidding war. We need you more than you need us. You've got the venue. You can't run the Morgul without coming down McCaslin, and we own McCaslin. They need us. So we're not going to be putting in a proposal.
We're all sharing the same thinking then.
Yep. And you may have seen the flyer out front as you were coming in. The town is hosting a blood drive a week from Tuesday. You'll get information about this in your weekly digest as well. I was told today that it's going to be running from between 2 and 3:30 p.m. a week from tomorrow. I believe we have like 15 reservations already booked, and we have, I believe, 9 more openings. So if anybody's interested in donating blood, in this room next Tuesday. Because if we don't donate enough
Monday nights
blood,
don't count.
Blood from a stone or some
Can
comment
you-
like that.
Explain what the criteria is to be able to give blood, because I know there are some people that can't, and not everyone knows the rules.
I don't know what they are.
Okay.
The only one I'm familiar with is you cannot have donated within the last 28 days. There are other things about body weight and the
Right.
most recent
Yeah.
medications that you've had. I'm
Trips
not
to
nearly
the
proficient
UK.
enough.
Dr. Markle could answer that.
Yeah.
Can you answer that?
Yeah, well, just for certain infections, or you've had infections, or you've traveled outside of the country, it's pretty, most people can, so.
Is there certain
Carrying mad cow
medications
disease, they
that
don't
you
want you.
are
That one,
exempt?
that one I
That's the
can't
tough
answer.
You don't?
Yeah. I think
Weight
that-
limits?
Yeah, that one I have to punt to the
Some of
blood
us
donor
don't have a
bank.
concern about a weight limit.
Yes, exactly. Can I ask a couple of things about, so Ridge 2 went into bankruptcy, and you noted that there was going to be, they had some interest in continuing their PDP, and that was going to be running out in October. Do you think that they're going to actually be here in time before that expires?
Yes. We gave them the calendar, indicated that, what the board's meeting schedule was between now and I believe it's either October 24th or October 28th. Encouraged them to do it sooner rather than later, and that it was a tricky issue. The board had recently agreed to such an extension for Ethan Allen, based on some representations that Ethan Allen had made. This particular group has no bones. They have no intentions of building Ridge 2, which was the professional office building. But they do feel that their ability to remarket the property and sell it to a prospective developer that would build is greater with the land entitlements. So not making their case for them, but
I
they will
thought
be
they-
back before you before the end of October.
I thought they had been extended once before.
They have.
I think they have.
They were originally approved for 18 months as a preliminary development plan, and the board subsequently has given them one 18-month extension.
And then Guardian Storage, that was a little disappointing to see. I thought everybody was lovey-dovey about the right-of-way.
We have heard, don't have confirmation, that the adjoining property owner immediately north of the Guardian Storage property also is in some financial distress. Whether it's foreclosure, whether it's bankruptcy, I'm not sure of the particulars, but that has led to a degree of, we can't get an answer. There's no doubt the agreement was the agreement, which was we're both going to dedicate the right-of-way. Guardian was going to build the first 150 feet or 200 feet to get to their entrance drive. The second adjacent property owner was going to build the second half to get to the second access to his property on the north. We certainly said we weren't going to condemn, so we were working with Guardian on coming up with an alternative mechanism so that they could get access in and out of their building if they wanted to proceed, and it looks like they do want to proceed. So.
Okay.
And it would go back to the old way if and when the property develops on the north.
Got it. That's all I have. Any other questions? Why don't we take, we're a little over, but why don't we take a couple minutes and then start the board meeting? Welcome, everybody. I'd like to call to order a regular meeting of the Board of Trustees for the Town of Superior for August 9th, 2010. And Phyllis, if you'd call a roll.
Okay, Mayor Andrew Muckle,
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Julia Gregoris,
Here.
Trustees Joe Swell,
Here.
Chris Hansen,
Here.
Sandy Pennington,
Here.
Lisa Skumatz,
Here.
Deborah Williams,
Here.
Town Manager Scott Randall,
Here.
and Attorney Christine Straczewski.
Juteski. Here.
Very good.
Close.
I don't see a nameplate.
It doesn't fit, right?
Yeah, exactly.
All right, that brings us to item number 3, approval of the agenda. Are there any changes to tonight's agenda? Seeing none, I'll entertain a motion to approve the agenda by Trustee Skumatz. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Trustee Gregoris, all in favor? Unanimous, thank you very much. That brings us to item number 4, reports, questions, and issues. Trustee Hansen, would you like to start?
Yep. A couple of comments, couple of questions. I attended the National Night Out last Tuesday. I didn't go last year, so I thought this one was really well attended, so I have nothing to compare it to, though. But it was a fun event. The highlight of the night was the medevac helicopter landing on the ball field, so everybody was anticipating that, and there was thunderstorms coming in, so it was kind of exciting. They had the bomb squad there with their little robot. The kids could go up and shake his hand, and their guy would talk through it. So it was just a really fun time, and glad that I went. Glad to say Indiana Street is done from the original construction. They started the new part, but at least we can get to Safeway now. Great job.
Looks good.
I mean, we drive down and say, wow, this is a pleasure driving down now. The one question I have is it possible that the light sensor doesn't work as well now because there's new concrete, there are new asphalt there? It seems like when you're going to Colton and you stop the light, it won't change unless somebody comes from the other side.
I'll check.
But great job. And then when I was out of town, there was an executive session on the town manager's review. I don't know what the end result was of that. Is there something that's circulated, or nothing happens from here? Or?
Right, nothing. We can talk about it offline.
Okay. And then the last thing is, what is the process, just so I know moving forward, if we want to get a discussion item included on the work session, what is the proper procedure to get that done? I was under the impression that one board member had to ask for it and then get a second by another one, and then it would be added.
Mm-hmm.
And
That's right.
that happened, and it didn't get added.
It doesn't say which meeting. We schedule it as I said, we've had stuff backing up. So
Okay. So we can't say a specific meeting. It depends on the workload.
Well, you can ask for that, but it doesn't guarantee it given the amount of time.
Gotcha. Okay.
That's allotted for other things.
That's it.
Okay, Trustee Sterling?
I have one kind of plea to our residents. I use the turf field 3 mornings a week for exercise, and kind of distressed at the condition I find it left in early 6 a.m. in the morning. I find cigarette butts out in the middle of trash. I don't think it's the teams.
12-year-olds.
Who's ever doing this, and we have other facilities too that are getting somewhat abused, and I just would ask our residents to take care of our facilities. They cost a lot. They're great to be used, and they shouldn't be abused. And if it's people that live in town, think about it. We're all paying for this. We all want to use them, and we want to keep them nice. And it'd be a shame to lose them because they weren't kept nice. That's just a personal plea, but it's just something I've observed. That on top of other issues we've dealt with this summer. Secondly, next Monday, there's going to be a special meeting of the Rocky Flats Coalition to discuss the proposed change to pond point of location spots we're measuring. And Chris and I expect will both be at that meeting. And then the comment period that the Department of Energy has for that has been extended into September, so I think the coalition's real action on that will take place in September. But we'll keep you up to date. There's also been, I think, in the news, a little more activity regarding those who question the state of the cleanup of Rocky Flats and really are opposed to it being opened up to wildlife refuge, and some additional claim of finding data or samples of actionable plutonium levels and so forth. Well, that's got to be looked at over the next period of time, and I don't know where that's going, but I suspect we'll hear more about that on Monday, and if we do, actually Chris will be the one reporting back on anything we hear at next Monday's meeting. But that's all I have.
Great, thanks. Trustee Skumatz?
I'm happy to be back, and I apologize for missing the month of July. Last year, I didn't have to miss the whole month because there were 3 things in one day, in one sort of couple of days that made an excuse for me to come back. But to spend $600 for a flight for a meeting was more than I could, justify.
I've done that.
I'm sure you have. But
I thought it was very noble last year when you did it.
Thank you. So I will catch up on the meetings, though, and be ready to talk the next one. I know in the past on the Finance Committee, we've generally circulated a note to the Finance Committee asking them what dates they could make. Did you do that and I just missed it? Okay. And then the last thing I wanted to say has to do with something on the consent agenda. Can I just mention it?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I think we don't have to have any Finance Committee meetings anymore, because if what happened in the minutes is correct, then we have a moneymaker in our midst. So it said, did you see that typo? It was a typo about how the cost of the solar stuff went from $1.1 million down to $798.
Okay.
And so we can
was a better
get one
deal?
for every single citizen. Yeah. So anyway,
I guess that's a correction. Huh?
we can sell it back to them at 50
Not what it was
times
supposed to be.
what's yes. So,
Very
yes.
good. Thanks. Let's see, I have, I guess, maybe I'll start with one question, and I sent an email, so hopefully that it had to do with the question about Hodgson Harris Reservoir, and I think that some residents came forward and had questions about it, and I think you have maybe some more information about that.
First, our first introduction to the whole issue of the Harris Reservoir came at an OSAC meeting within the last month, when one of the OSAC members came forward and said Boulder County has a $500,000 project that they want to do to fix the dam that supplies that reservoir, and they're looking for some financial support to do so. When we immediately followed up, not having heard anything from Boulder County on that, they said, we don't have a project, we have a problem. So they weren't asking for money, they weren't looking for partnership, they just said, here's a particular issue. So that's the extent of our discussion so far. Boulder County does have obligations to provide agricultural water to a water user to the north and east of that particular location, and plans on complying with those water rights by shoring up about 10 feet of the dam, nowhere near the water levels that have traditionally been there. And they have no intentions of doing anything more. So if the board is interested in us having those discussions with Ron Stewart and others at Boulder County Open Space, we'd be more than happy to. But all of the discussions at this juncture have been by the Boulder County Open Space Advisory Group.
Right, and the information you sent back to me this was all precipitated by the state dam engineer saying that the dam was unsafe at its current construction.
Correct. And that order of magnitude of $500,000 was an internal estimate to replace what has previously existed. But in the meantime, it's almost completely drained.
Okay.
And so they're not willing to put the money in to put a completely new
Correct.
dam. And it isn't just a crack, it is just degradation of the entire dam.
Nobody's seen the state dam inspector's report, but they're indicating that, yes, it needs to be virtually reconstructed.
And what would it take on our part to be able to convince BOCO to change their mind?
Having
How
them
many
flush.
registered voters do we have? And
The entire $500,000.
again, I've had no conversations with any. Juanita's had conversations with one underling within Ron Stewart's operations. I've purposely not called Ron until I knew that we had some interest or there was some guidance. So if the board's interested in me digging into it further, but their immediate reaction back to us was, we're not looking for partnerships. We're not looking to spend any money on fixing this more than what we have to do in order to maintain our one rural or agricultural water lease.
And where are they going to get the water for that? Just pipe it in?
No,
or-
they can do a much less significant dam improvement, which would maintain about 10 feet of water, 10 feet high, instead of
And
the entire
that's
dam.
just enough to irrigate the property
Yes,
to the
north and east.
northeast. Of which,
It's not going to look as nice as it did before.
Absolutely not.
Not even close.
Absolutely not.
not even close.
And recognize that the only thing Boulder County owns is the reservoir. All of the area surrounding it is owned by private property. We've always referred to it as this is a Harrius property.
Right.
It's about 23 acres of developable ground.
And is there any recent, can't think of the word, survey of what the land is worth?
No. An appraisal?
Appraisal, thank you. Oh, I'm gonna-
I'd have to go back through our records. We haven't done an appraisal in the 3.5 years I've been here. There may have been one that predates me.
How many acres is the lake? Or it's not that big.
It isn't that large. Yeah. Eyeballing, maybe 2 to 4.
2 acres, okay.
Trustee Pennington?
I certainly would be interested in further review of the situation, but I'd also extend it a step, possibly not refilling it with water, possibly turning it into something more attractive, grassing it, dirt, grassing it, making it more presentable in one fashion or another. I don't know if that's possible. I don't know how deep it is, anything like that, but perhaps there's another way to skin the cat and still be mindful of the property values contiguous to it.
I mean, anything is better than the dirt.
Understand. Here's the quandary. Boulder County owns the reservoir. They use the water for a specific contractual purpose. So I don't think the water is just going to totally go away unless they find another way to fulfill that agricultural water contract. We did look at it internally very quickly to see if we might have any use for it that would justify a significant expenditure. And we looked at either an additional water storage reservoir of our own or something that we know we've had an issue with was irrigation water. But getting the irrigation water to there was going to be a very, very costly. There, we have better locations, better places in which to put our irrigation water that we're generating. So we looked at some of those and just couldn't come up and said, it's worth 6 figures for us to invest in it.
Can it be maintained at a higher level, the water level?
With a more significant investment in the dam.
Only?
Yes.
Yeah.
Jim has a...
So, well, sure. We're sort of free-flowing here in the town of Superior, so I believe Mr. Payne has comments regarding this issue. In the meantime, I also had this offline conversation with the manager. It's like, when Zaharias comes forward, maybe that could be improved as part of the Zaharias project, whether or not the water rights would allow for stormwater detention in that area that would, make that better. I don't know, but I have a hard time seeing how the town of
I
Superior
bet
could come
Jim
up.
has it all solved.
I suspect that we'd have some difficult time coming up with $500,000 out of our budget to improve the dam. Mr. Payne?
Jim Payne, 2475 Clayton Circle. If I could just comment as a member of OSAC, not ProStack, but OSAC in this case, because they did address this. First of all, just not a few clarifications, I think, from my briefing on it at that meeting. The water rights go to Rock Creek Farm. That's what that is about. But the issue is that if the water level is brought down to 10 feet, then it's under the threshold that requires state inspection and all that sort of thing. OSAC had some interest in pursuing some sort of looking at, exploring some way to maintain those water levels to some degree in some way that OSAC we might recommend to the board that OSAC might contribute in some way. And they thought was that there'd be some quid pro quo where we might have expanded recreational use of that area, because there are birds in there. It's a interesting area that's always been a priority for OSAC. So that was what OSAC's interest was, and that's the thought was that there might be something that would be worthwhile investing OSAC funding in some cooperative venture. So that's what that was about.
Great.
Thanks.
Thanks. I think
Does
that's
OSAC fund?
What's that?
Never mind.
Open Space Fund.
Yeah.
That's different.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Well, that was my first comment, I believe. Let's see. I also wanted to say that the town manager and I will be meeting with our colleagues across the street next week to talk about issues of mutual concern. I don't know if anything's going to come of that, but just as an FYI. Or just in general. I mean, I think the interchange precipitated most of that conversation, but, like to see if we can do anything to get the ball moving or the car moving or turning or whatever the appropriate analogy would be. So we will keep you apprised of that. There was a Metro Mayor's Caucus meeting. Not really too much that applied to us. There was Xcel is improving the Cherokee power station in Denver. Xcel was talking about that. Denver and South Metro Water Authority is doing some cooperative agreement, which it sounds like what they're going to do is what we do with the potable interconnects, but it's a little unclear to me. And then there was a discussion about what's on our consent agenda for the HUD grant, I forget the sustainability issue, and there wasn't consensus about that because there was concern about what the unintended consequences of all this might be. And so that was, I think, the summary of that meeting. And then there was a US 36 Mayors and Commissioners meeting that also not too much came of that. They're continuing to do the modeling for the managed lanes and seeing whether or not there's enough money in there that we can use the TIFIA bond funds for. But that's that project, that analysis won't be done, I think, till the end of September. So I think that was a summary of those two meetings. So that's all I had. Trustee Williams?
Well, I was going to report on OSAC, but you took that one. So the only other thing I would just wanted to thank staff and the board for adding the resolution for Dr. Cog in support of their resolution for getting possible funds in the future from 3 different entities as a new venture. The other thing is I went to a meeting with Trustee Pennington for the library almost a month ago, and I'll let her report on that. But it was very interesting, very productive meeting, and collecting information for a library survey for the future. So we'll see where that goes. That's it.
Great, thanks. Trustee Griffiths?
Just a couple of thoughts, couple of questions. I don't need answers today since I didn't call you ahead of time. At what point we had talked about perhaps having a community garden? Is that dead on the water? Is that is there an interest on the board to revisit that? And
I think ProStack is looking at it. It's part of their many things they're looking at.
Okay. All right. And the second thing is would there be an interest in exploring, I guess, doing like a farmer's market here in Superior?
It could be part of town center.
Well, if we wait for town center, we may not have any fresh vegetables for a while. But I know that there are other towns around the United States that do that, and although it starts initially small, maybe once a month, and as momentum and as the word spreads, and it brings people in, it's a great time to meet people and to shake hands and to exchange goods and to obviously bring fresh produce to our town. And I mean, I don't see a downside. I don't know how that would go about and how we would even begin to have that discussion. I just wanted to bring it up and see if you have any thoughts about that.
Seems like
Different than Boulders.
or Louisville's, or
or the one that was held at the...
I think it would
mall.
attract.
One.
I think it would attract quite a few residents, honestly. So.
How about a farmer's market and flea market?
The town manager is leaning forward.
I have done them in some other communities. They are community building in a way. One of my communities, it was a very organic, so that it wasn't viewed as necessarily competition towards existing retailers. We have 3 very large grocer operations, and when you think about logistics, where would you put it? It's pretty difficult not to put it in one of their front yards.
Yeah, no, I know. I thought about that. I thought, geographically speaking, where we would put it. That's the other question. But
I think it's I think it's an interesting idea that might take a little while to come to fruition, and it might require town center. But I see that there's a developer who's going to be coming forward shortly. So
We're holding our breath. Anyway, we could look more into it, and actually it was one of the elements that one of the potential projects that we looked at when we were talking about more community events. And maybe that's not a mix because of our retail mix, but maybe there are other things along those lines, whether it's flea market or carnival or who knows what they might be, that could be community gathering kinds of events. My initial reaction is, and I'm not sure where I would try to host it without offending somebody.
Yep. Thanks, Trustee Pennington.
I was stopped when I was out and about last week by some residents who were concerned about El Dorado K-8 traffic safety going into the new school year. And I wondered what the mechanism is for calling a meeting of the Traffic and Safety Committee and inviting the representative folks from El Dorado K-8 to sit around the table and discuss that issue.
The mechanism, just shortly, is that if you want to host a meeting, then come up with a time that works, and that would be great, and I'm sure that we'd be happy to invite
we usually do
anybody.
it before the work session, so we can do it like at 5 o'clock. We can do. Typically
I don't have my look ahead. I believe there's one scheduled for September.
And I also want to invite the principal of El Dorado K through 8, and we discussed this issue as well.
So am I getting head nods from the board that this has merit? Okay.
It always does.
Okay.
It's not so.
Okay.
And in general, I'd say that the Sheriff's Department is acutely aware of traffic issues during the beginning of the school year at both schools, and I suspect that they're aware of this again, and they usually increase their enforcement right around those times.
I think what has not happened is that we have not had the principal or previous principals from that school to attend. So if there's an interest from principal now, I think that changes the whole dynamics of the discussion. So
I think there's
that'd be great.
some interest in really thoroughly hashing out how we can make that whole El Dorado or Indiana corridor going all the way down north of there safer. So is that, Scott, is that something you pulled together? Or okay.
As I said, we've already got it scheduled. That's on
Oh,
your
you
look ahead.
do?
In September.
September 27th.
Thank you.
Oh.
Do we want to do it sooner?
The premise was, let's get a couple of weeks under our belt and see what the new school year is producing. Because generally when the kids are on their way back to school is when we get all of the complaints about whether it's sidewalks or speed bumps or flashing signs or whatever we want. That's when we generally hear about them.
Okay.
But typically what we've had in attendance is concerned parents, not necessarily anybody officially from the school. So I think that would be great if we had.
And this is something I discussed specifically with the principal at the end of May when school wrapped up, that this is something that I would look into and invite her to.
And if you'd like to move it up from the second meeting in September to the first meeting, we'll poll the TSC and see your availability.
And what I'd say is that, we're never compelled to have the meeting here. If you want to host a meeting up at El Dorado
We
K-8.
could even go up there and walk around there.
Right.
So
We could do that too.
Suggest a site visit around 8 a.m. or 3.
Yeah, that's right.
8:20.
Okay. Yeah, what wasn't on the look ahead was a specific El Dorado K-8 focus. And that, just to make clear, is my point, that it have an El Dorado K-8 focus. Louisville Library Board, of great group of people on that. Their town manager and a member of the council attended this last brainstorming session about goals, objectives, and approach for a Louisville Superior user survey, and making great progress. The next meeting on that's August 12th, so looking forward to that. Chris, have we sealed the date for the board meeting with ProStack?
No.
Okay.
The board was queried by Phyllis with a couple additional comments, so we're waiting to hear back on.
Okay.
So I know Joe is out of town, not available to attend through September.
I could be there on the 29th. I hear from my wife about that. But that's her birthday.
So you'll just be getting back with us on it, or?
I will.
Phyllis
Okay.
is polling.
Phyllis, okay.
The 10th of September.
Well, the
Did you say the
suggestion
10th?
was to do it on an off night, not a regular ProStack meeting, because
Right.
it's Dr. Cog meeting.
September 22nd was on the table.
22nd was good, but then Joe couldn't be there, so we
Okay.
want to try and
So the
schedule it.
29th?
It's going to be at the gym, too,
Yeah,
see if he
I
can
could
get
be
his
there on
group
the
there.
29th.
So maybe we shoot for the 29th if Jim can get his group.
What day of the week?
I'm leaning towards Phyllis again. So if you
Okay.
could send us out a poll, that would be
Yeah,
great.
I will
Yeah.
give you another.
Okay.
Chris, what day of the week is that, the 20th?
Wednesday.
Wednesday.
Wednesday?
Talking Wednesday nights, all of them, I think.
And then on the Resolute Special District public hearing, I'm going to plead newness again. I would find it useful, and if it's only me, I will conduct this conversation offline, but if anybody else would benefit from a listing of the pros and cons to special districts and financial implications of special districts, sort of a 1 or 2 page document perhaps to educate us, I certainly would like that, but I can also do that individually.
I suspect it's a part will be, it was a specific question during the last meeting, so I suspect it'll be part of the staff report.
It
Okay,
should be part of the public hearing.
okay. That's all?
Great. Town manager?
The only item that I missed earlier was a reminder, less for the board and more for the public, that the pool hours will be changing on Monday with the start of the new school year, so we'll be going to the abbreviated hours for a couple of weeks before we shut the pool down on Labor Day.
Correct. And I should have said also, but I wanted to congratulate the town staff again on it. I've had the opportunity to start working through the budget, and it's another fantastic production. I think you did a great job. Your town staff has done a great job, and I look forward to delving into that in more detail.
Thank you.
So, town attorney, I'm not going to hope to...
No, I can wait till after the last report. I just had one afterthought.
I'll be quick. There's no report.
Town clerk.
No, I don't think
All right, we're coming back around.
Well, we had previously talked a little bit about the state road race, bicycle race that apparently will be in August, and if we were to participate in that, it immediately occurred to me that we had a window for bringing back Superior Days, which would be, I think, a neat thing to bring back. That's just my thoughts.
Great.
Great.
Thanks. That brings us to item number 5, which is public comment on consent agenda and non-agenda items. Going once, going twice. Sold. Which brings us to item number 6, presentations. We don't have any tonight, which brings us to the consent agenda. And on the agenda is approval of the minutes of July 26, 2010 Board of Trustees meeting, acceptance of the minutes of the Open Space Advisory Committee, the Planning Commission, and the Parks, Recreation, Open Space, and Trails Advisory Committee meetings, adoption of resolutions approving an agreement with Project One Integrated Services and contract extension with Taylor Coors LLC for the Blackfoot Street drainage improvements, and adoption of a resolution endorsing the Dr. Cog application for partnerships for sustainable communities. With that, I'll entertain a motion. Trustee Skumatz, is there a second? Trustee Williams, discussion? All in favor? Oh,
I have to abstain from the minutes.
Okay.
Oh, and can I just ask one thing? The Dr. Cog resolution, is that can be forwarded automatically just over to them? Great.
Okay. And I guess my only comment, we had agreed that we're going to work on the Sagamore drainage issues. We're approving it here. I think we talked about it earlier in the in this evening vis-à-vis the alleyway discussion, but, unfortunately, this is not it's more acutely aware an issue in that area because of the mailbox, but if you drive throughout the entire neighborhood, I suspect that all of those streets have that issue, and the question is whether or not we're going to then do all of the streets that way. So just as food for thought. But with that, I'll entertain, and actually, Phyllis, I think I have a motion in a second. We're spending some money here.
Cirelli?
Yes.
Gregorius?
Yes.
Hanson?
Yes.
Buckle?
Yes.
Pennington?
Yes.
Skubans?
Yes.
Williams?
Yes.
Great, thanks. That motion carries. That brings us to item number 8, which is adoption of a resolution approving an agreement with TerraCare Associates for snow and ice control services. Mr. Randall.
Very briefly, and then I'm sure Kurt has some information to share with the board. The matter before the board is the approval of an extension of our existing contract for snow and ice control services with TerraCare. When TerraCare was originally hired in the spring of 2008, it was after a competitive bid process, at which time 5 vendors submitted proposals. TerraCare was by far the lowest proposal at that time. They were also known as ACC at the time. In the 2 full years that they provided services to the town, we have received, my perspective, excellent service and extraordinary rates. And that's why we're recommending that we renew the contract again for what would be the 3rd year. Specifically, this contract, 2 points. One, the board had asked recently that our largest service contracts include some performance measures. This is a contract that we actually put those in over a year ago, and we've identified what they were and how the contractor had responded to those. The second is how the contract has changed over time. When we originally bid this contract, there were 2 points. There was a fixed rate for equipment rental and a variable rate for labor rates. The fixed equipment rental was $171,000 and change for 600 hours of equipment use. Second year, the dollar amount stayed flat, $171,000, and we increased the number of equipment hours up to 1,150 hours. The contract that's before you tonight calls for the equipment rental rate to stay the same, $171,000, and no limit on the number of hours. If we have 20 storms, 40 storms, or no storms, we're going to pay $171,000 for the equipment rental. The other aspect of that is the variable labor rate. Originally, it was a $58 labor rate for the first 600 hours and a higher rate, 90-something, after 600 hours. Those same rates were in place for the 2009 contract, $58 an hour for the first 1,150 hours, and anything over that, 92. The contract before you tonight, with unlimited hours on equipment, unlimited hours at $58 per labor. There's also something that Kurt had come up with, was recognizing that some of the time that the vendor spends in town is not actually plowing. It might be surveying the community. It might just, we've called them in, we want you here because the forecast says at 2 o'clock it's going to start. We want you here at 1:30. A standby rate that says that when they're in town but not plowing, we'll be paying them $35 an hour. So all of those are enhancements, we feel, to what has already been a very, very good contract. That's the basis why it's before you tonight.
Great, thanks. Public Works Director.
Good evening, Kirk Carr, Public Works Director. I think Scott said most of what I had. You all have received.
Sorry about that.
I know.
Steal your thunder all the time.
I don't want to make an assumption. Everybody does have a handout, or no? Yes. Okay, I need.
Unless there's
Phyllis, may I
Is there a different handout?
Is it in the digital copy?
No.
maybe, for right now, you could describe what it is while copies are being made.
This was a request I'd received either late this morning or early this afternoon from one of the board members for some additional analysis.
Sure.
That's why it wasn't in the packet.
Okay, we do have copies. I apologize. So what we've done is we've tried to address the questions that came up in the previous debriefing we had regarding the prior snow season, 2009 to 2010. We looked at historical years and those costs back to 2006. We also tried to calculate our hours of our staff and the time they spent addressing snow issues throughout the year. That has been broken out between the end of 2009 and the beginning of 2010. And then where we had the data, that began in 2008, where we have that detail, we tried to quantify our costs on our materials breakouts. That would be our ice slicer, sand salt, mag chloride, liquid de-icer, those types of things. In addition, just because it is coordinated with, it tends to be coordinated with the snow plowing, we've included the street sweeping, just so we can see that direct cost, and then kind of a grand total there at the bottom. What I want to note is what I heard was there's a lot of concern about the man hours that our staff spent on snow. What I want to clarify is that these hours that I show, so approximately 160 hours in 2009, in an amount of about $4,800, and 182 hours in 2010 in the amount of about $5,600. That's for plowing our facilities. That would be town hall, the pools, pump stations. That's dealing with areas around town where we have the ice buildup, and we have to go out with our loader and break up that ice. A lot of times that happens after storms, a couple days afterwards. The sidewalks, things like that, and then also that does include some of that supplemental town-wide plowing we did. So that is not just town-wide plowing, but that is everything we do as a staff as Public Works. Okay, so that's kind of just to answer what we think we heard in that original meeting.
Thanks for the follow-up. Questions from the board? Trustee Skuma?
I had a couple of questions, and one is, I think our standard policy for contracts that we send out as an RFP is 3 or 4 years, and then we rebid it or something like that. I know that in this case, we did it 1 year because we had this whole tentative, whatever, are they going to perform sort of thing, but we did go out as an RFP process. So is this, I think our policy is 3 or 4 years?
No less frequent, every 4 years at least, unless the manager decides it needs to be done more frequently.
Thanks. I knew it was one of those years.
It used to be 5, and then when you formally adopted the purchasing policy in 2008, you reduced it to no more than 4 years without bidding.
Okay, so that gives me even greater comfort. One of the other things I wanted to mention about this sort of package of things is, a question about this handout. So how many sweeps is this one? Now, it said you used to have 2 sweeps. Now, how many is this $6,832 sweep?
That still has 2 townwide sweeps.
2
in it.
sweeps still, okay. For a
Our
lot
total
cheaper.
contract, I believe that we got in our bid was around $19,000, and then I believe our budget moving into next year, we've budgeted $24,500. We've just tried to add a small amount of budget for special services sweeping if we need it.
Okay. The only other element I had was, I thought these performance, I saw the keyword of staff proposes to monitor these performance metrics, and I had a couple of comments on the performance metrics, so I wanted to go ahead and,
Sure.
I didn't think that, they were done deals, so, okay. But I think the cost per lane mile per estimated inch of snowfall or whatever that's one of them I was really interested in, so thanks for getting that in. One of the things I was interested in adding maybe was closures. Like if we have to close McCaslin or something like that from frequently because they don't get there soon enough or something like that. I don't see anything related to that reflects that sort of thing.
That was Tier 1 uptime. That was kind of the intent
Is that what that
of
means?
that. Yeah. So Tier 1 would be our McCaslin route, and so we would the uptime for that route. If we
Okay,
wanted,
so you're the inverse of what I was measuring. Fine.
Okay, all right.
That's fine. I just didn't know what uptime
Yeah.
meant, so that's
Yeah, sorry.
where I was coming from. I'm really happy about the community call logging also. That was another really good one, I think. We might want to do it, as opposed to just comparing year to year, we might want calls per storm or something like that.
Okay.
Or calls per inch. We've got to normalize it somehow, otherwise we can't compare year to year. So in almost all these cases, we need to normalize it by either number of storms or number of inches or both or something. It's a pretty easy division either way. One of the things, and that also goes along with that response time log. The response time log, just adding it all up, doesn't mean a lot if there are more storms one year and fewer storms another year and all that sort of thing. I think the only other I think that was it then. Sweeps, you just answered, I think. Oh, sweeps or dust. I wondered if there was anything we needed to do about that whole issue of, gee, if they put down a lot of dirt, do we end up with, violating the air stuff, in later times? So that's, I think, the only other thing I was thinking of reflecting.
That's material applied per mile?
Yeah,
And we have standards, they're the CDOT standards that say no more than X per lane mile?
We could attach a performance measurement to sweeping and go off of calls of dust, if that's what you're getting at.
It's something like that because, there can be a report of how much is put down, but, maybe it gets plowed off to the side and then it doesn't get swept up or something. But when we have a lot of stuff to sweep up and it starts to make us violate our air quality standards, and that's the thing I'm after. Not just the delivery, but also the effects. So
Okay.
those are it. That's it.
Trustee Williams?
Thank you for doing this. Those, in fact, my questions are actually answered in this. But I'm going to go a little bit further as far as the materials. The amount of materials that we're using currently this year, how does it compare to previous years? Are we using more, less, the same?
And by material type, right?
And by material type as well, as such as the de-icer, this, whatever you call
Ice
that.
slicer.
What?
Ice
slicer, right.
The ice slicer. We don't have a lot of data to work with. I haven't been able to locate a lot of data on like tons of material or gallons of material.
Okay.
There was a reference that we used 5,000 tons of sand in I think 2006. Very heavy snow year. This year, I think we used 500 tons of ice slicer, roundabout. Again, I think that was in 2006, very heavy snow year. I don't have any other data. That one was a data point that had stood out in a memo that had been to the board previously several years ago.
Okay. And then of the materials that we've purchased in 2010, do we have that in storage, or are we just kind of going to be over budget this year?
I believe we have enough in storage right now that'll get us into 2011. We put in a 200-ton order at the end of the year, towards the end of the year. We work with CDOT to, we measure the tonnage we put down, and we stay honest, and we order our own materials. But at the same time, we kind of work in conjunction with CDOT, because if we both put in full orders, there's not enough room in that shed. So we kind of, trade off a little bit.
Okay, yeah, I was just curious as to those numbers, how they were so close as far as the end of the year budget.
Yeah, and that can move around. If you get a lot of snow, we need to order early. It could fall into 09 and not hit, or 10 and not hit 11. So.
And I just was assuming that maybe you had a supply as this currently.
When is that recognized as an expense? Is it recognized as an expense? I don't know if it's pre-placed and then recognized accrued as it's used on the road. Tell me how the accounting works.
It's just recognized as an expense when we place the order.
Okay.
When we're invoiced, we pay for it. But we know our season total.
Right. So on some of this, we may well have paid for it in one fiscal year and used it in another.
Yep. Yeah, and in fact, all of our slicer orders, ice slicer orders for this last season, I believe all of them took place in 2010. We didn't have any orders in 09. We had enough to get us into 2010.
Trustee Hanson and then Trustee Lawrence.
Thanks for putting this together and supplying this. We have a history here now from pre-2008 through last year. So we kind of know what outside vendors are willing to do the job for. In the spirit of keeping as much money here locally, do we make any attempt at all from year to year to try and award the job, or at least have a local vendor bid on this job?
No,
How come?
because the board has a policy that says when you pick a vendor, you keep them for up to 4 years, unless you're dissatisfied with the vendor. and then you go back out to market.
But you have in your discretion, though, if you want to put it out to bid.
Right.
You can do that.
And I have.
You have since 2008?
Yeah, this one.
Not this contract. Contracts that I've been dissatisfied with.
Okay.
Engineering services, building inspection services. Contract with the town is not an entitlement for 4 years.
It just seems like we'd want to give the contract to someone locally if they could come in at this price or even less. If there's that opportunity, why wouldn't we do everything possible to keep the dollars here? I understand that we have a purchasing policy, but we don't have a policy that's set in stone. That we could, if we wanted to, keep the dollars here. Why
Board
not
can do as it wishes. When the purchasing policy was approved in 2008 and modified in 2008, and the modification had to do with environmentally preferenced purchasing, there was no discussion about local preference or anything else. So that's even a phrase that's been entered into the vocabulary within the last couple of weeks.
And if I could, it's that, I think the town manager, you said this, but this has been the board policy, not the we've been direct the manager to do this, so he's just implementing our directive.
Our policy, to my understanding, since we went over it a couple of years ago, is best value, and we don't have local preference. I know we've discussed, but that's that's come up as a possibility. It is why or why not remains to be seen if we consider doing that. But right now we don't have a local preference, and I don't think we can make up a local preference policy on the go.
Trustee Williams, I think. I'm sorry. Trustee Williams?
No, are you finished? It's definitely a good subject, but I hate to change the subject. So I am. As far as you mentioned, there are 5,000 tons of sand. Is that, you meant ice slicer? Is that the 5,000 tons of the ice
In that
slicer?
year, I don't know the exact
Okay.
mix. And again, I pulled that number from the board
Right.
memo. And I don't have any other data.
Okay, and then you mentioned 500 tons of sand. I was
Yeah.
wondering specifically if that was ice slicer. And then,
I believe in '06 it was sand.
okay.
Maybe there was a mix of ice slush out of, but the way that memo read, sand salt.
But the 500 tons in 2010 is ice slicer or sand? It is sand.
I think we're about 400 and change of ice slicer and 100 of sand.
Oh, okay. And do we ever use, is it called magnesium chloride?
We do. We use 8,000 gallons.
8,000? And that's this year?
09 to 010.
Okay.
Yeah.
And what have we used in the past?
I don't know.
You don't? Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Good to
I
know
can
that.
dig deeper if those numbers are very important. I can keep searching, but they're not readily available.
Okay.
Trustee Skumas?
I found in my phone scribble, or my plain scribbles, one more indicator, sorry. And I kind of look at indicators and look at some of that are activity indicators, some that are cost indicators, but you need some outcome indicators as well. You've got some. But one of their outcome indicators that I think, it's not something that's directly under their control, but it is under their control, is accidents. It's kind of like, the EMT guys can only get there so fast, but what they measure for a lot of EMT stuff is heart attacks per population, and that's not what they directly do, but that's the sort of ultimate outcome. So something about accidents per whatever might be a good other kind of indicator.
We could coordinate that with Boulder County Sheriff,
Thank
and then we'd report those, subcategorize them by why it was an accident. If someone ran a
Well,
light versus someone slipping.
Perhaps, yeah.
Yeah.
You can, that would make sense.
More board questions? Trustee Pennington?
I have two questions. One, I'm assuming it's been a standing goal of the board to reduce use of sand? Or is this a...
Yes.
Okay.
No, that's true.
Very much so.
I understand the particulate problem with sand, the dust problem, but I also know that the magnesium chloride issue we've raised before as potential pockmarking and wear and tear on definitely the surface concrete work, and then I believe I raised the point that if it's happening on the surface, perhaps it's happening to the subsurface as well. So has there been an assessment of what's our best alternative in terms of total effect on concrete and/or infrastructure as well as on environment? For example, mag chloride's going somewhere. It's not just evaporating, disappearing. It's going into the air. It's going into the water. So can you address sort of the net impact here of one versus the other?
Mag chloride versus some other
Other approach, even sand. I mean, yes, sand
Well, I mean, they each
and
have a
dust.
different application.
Right.
We try to use just the ice slicer, but when the temperature gets a little too cold, it'll only activate down to a certain.
And what is ice slicer composed
Ice
of?
slicer is a granular material, granular salt, like a mineral salt. It has some magnesium chloride content to it, so we use that. Typically, we use that. And when it gets too cold, then sometimes we'll use the magnesium chloride to activate the ice slicer to even lower temperatures, or just supplement as a liquid de-icer. Sometimes we use sand. Sand will add traction in areas where it can get slippery. We try to minimize the sand just because that's a definite sweep afterwards. If we can use just a little bit of ice slicer and that seems to work for the storm, then we may not need to sweep. Especially if there's we have a storm come in on the weekend and we're predicting a storm for the next weekend. We may be able to extend our sweeping after that next storm and not sweep every storm. So we're managing temperatures, we're managing the traction and the flow of the traffic, we're managing our budgets. It's an ongoing balance.
Mm-hmm. But in the science of roadway maintenance,
We're
where are
within
we
the current, I believe, science that everybody's using. You can go to more agricultural-based, ethanol-type-based things, de-icers, and like a corn-based de-icer. And those may not have the effects on the concrete as much, but there's more effect on the environment. They add more ammonia to the streams. This has all been researched by CDOT significantly.
Mm-hmm.
There's been a lot of money on this. It's all publicly available on their website. And right now that we're using what we think is the best thing on the market to use.
okay.
I think with the concrete, I've spent a lot of time walking our streets in Rock Creek, original town. I think the issues with the concrete are issues of poor concrete. It's not, I don't see consistency. I see it very spotty. I could show you all out here at the handicap ramp where you cross over to the Parks building. You can see two sections of concrete poured right next to each other. One's actually older and looks great. The one right next to it is degrading. There's a poor quality of concrete. So I can show you an example of that. We could just walk outside and look, and that's what I believe are the issues with the concrete. And the reason I think that spot's important is it serves the hill. So all that drainage comes down the hill, and that's probably our most concentrated point of magnesium chloride in this town. So I think it's a good test spot to say, here's good concrete that's older than this newer concrete that's degrading.
Do you feel that, to me, the relevant comparison, yes, there are different layers of concrete. I've got two right in my own driveway. Do you feel the deterioration is more pronounced for mag chloride versus for other alternatives? For example, sand, or sand-salt combo, or ice slicer, or whatever the other, that's where I'm trying.
There are various research reports. Some say mag chloride is not corrosive. Some say it is corrosive. What I would say is I would probably lean towards it is corrosive. to what extent beyond sand, magnesium chloride is shown to be more corrosive than salt. Sand is not corrosive. Sand is corrosive if it scours. In a flood, a lot of sand coming, canyons, that's how canyons get formed, but not, it doesn't affect our streets. So, you could use salt, it's not as effective. You need to add more salt per lane mile to get the same effect as the ice slicer.
Well, it's just a point of conversation,
Sure.
and I certainly encourage you to keep track of it, because to the extent over time we show significant issues, I guess I'd appreciate knowing about it.
Can I add one more thing to that? We are also somewhat tied to what CDOT uses.
Sure.
If we do not use what they use, then we have to create our own facility to store those materials. That comes as an additional expense as well. So it's not as simple as just saying, hey, this is what we want to use.
Good point. That's a great point, actually. The other question I have is, in looking at the TerraCare contract, I frankly, there's compliments to go out, or I'm actually very amazed that, for example, 600 hours of equipment rental has morphed into 1,150 hours, and net cost to the town has remained the same. That's not my experience typically. Typically, it sort of goes the other direction. Would you, and there are several other features of this, for example, the $35 wait standby time rate versus 58 otherwise. Could you tell us how that subject came, how did that happen, I guess? How did they, if they knew they had the contract, then actually offer this? Did you negotiate this?
We negotiated it. What I did is I took what I heard at our debriefing and our overall discussion, and I sat down with them and I did a performance review with them and explained to them some of the concerns and some of the areas where, if they can make additional concessions, it helps us, manage our snow better and our budget better. And we just asked them to consider those things, and they did. I think one of the benefits of a multi-year contract is you can get into a situation where you're developing a relationship, and it's a working relationship. And whether it's a local or an outside contractor, that relationship is beneficial. And I think if you were to go to something where you bid it every year, anybody can be cutthroat. I think that could be a detriment to a local contractor that maybe has the low bid and has a 4 or 5 year contract, and then an outside person wants to come in and, maybe they're trying to save their business and they get cutthroat and they start undercutting our local contractors. So, there are pros and cons to each of these approaches. But I think overall, to answer your question, they view us as a partner, and they want to make our community happy.
I'd go one step further. Kurt did a great job on getting this, and there's been some sidebar discussions with many of you about where we were at in the process and when we were going to be bringing it to the board for consideration. We pushed the envelope on certain things that we didn't get. We didn't get everything we asked for. There was one that we said, hey, you're guaranteeing us a 60-minute response time. We want a 30-minute response time, regardless of when we call. That one hit a nerve in terms of having an implication on their cost. So we backed away. But we tried to get summer equipment use. This is for equipment that is parked in our facilities from October 1st, I believe, until May 1st. Unlimited use of the equipment. We tried to also get it for the summer. They said, no, can't quite go that far. So we didn't get it all, but we got a lot.
Great. Additional questions? I think Trustee Williams said you.
I was just going to ask, isn't part of what you were negotiating was how they used their time? I thought I remember reading something about that, how they were using their time in the beginning to what you were able to allow them to do more in the same amount of time?
Essentially we said, do roads A, B, and C, and this was 2008 to 2009. We said, do roads A, B, and C. So they would do that. They may have had more capability to do E, F, G, H, I, J, K, but they didn't, because we only told them to do this. So we said, well, we want you to do more roads. As long as you can keep plowing beyond the major arterials and secondary arterials, keep doing it. And then if the storm picks up and you can't keep up, then you can, focus on those major arterials. but as long as you're on our streets, we want you plowing. We don't want you going up and down bare pavement. We want you actually plowing something. So that we implemented after that first storm. And it really didn't come at any additional cost because we're using what I would call surplus equipment. Not numbers of equipment, but just the number of miles they could serve.
Thanks.
Additional questions from the board? Public comment regarding this issue?
I'm George Kuffner, 7520 West Coal Creek. Last Friday, I had about a 2-hour meeting with Kurt at Old Chicago's about the snow. And I seen Chris there while we were having lunch talking about the snow. I called him Friday night because we were talking about what I could do it for, what I couldn't do it for. I called him Friday night and said we had to have another little talk about it on Monday before we talked to Mr. Randall. And we talked Monday for about 2 hours, 2 hours and 20 minutes, and kind of put a proposal together to Mr. Randall that would save the town about $192,000 in 4 years. Unlimited hours on trucks and 30-minute response time. And if you want a truck for $40 an hour in the summer, a dump truck for $40 an hour. It may not be one of my snow trucks, but it would be a dump truck, one that I use in the dirt, not in the snow. And I thought it was the real truth is I'm bored. I'm tired of sitting at home. So, yeah, I'm willing to go to work for a lot less money. Give me something to do besides watch a soap opera. So when I got up from the park bench with Kurt, he told me he was going to put this in language that Mr. Randall could understand. Which, that's fine. That's his boss. And about 2 hours later, I get a phone call from Kurt, and he says to me, he says, well, George, I'm going to let you know where you stand. I said, well, go ahead, let me know. He says, Mr. Randall says that's not enough savings, and he's sticking with TerraCare. Me as a resident, me as a contractor, I can save you $192,000 in 4 years and guarantee you 30-minute response time or less. I feel that we have something a little personal going on here instead of focus for the best of our town. And you talked about the closures on the streets. In 14 years, I think I closed at one time. Back-to-back 2-foot snowstorms and 80-mile-an-hour windstorm. Last year, they closed it 3 or 4 times. And I heard a couple of excuses. Oh, that storm come in real quick. Well, lots of storms come in real quick. I mean, it's Mother Nature. She deals with whatever she wants. But I thought that I figured that it would be easier to get along with him than to keep fighting with our town manager. But I don't think he sees that in his best interest. So I wish I got a paper here that Kurt printed out for me when we were done talking. You guys, I'll give it to all you if you'd like to see it. But I feel $192,000. That's a lot of money to save in a 4-year period. And you also get to keep the money in town. So I buy more stuff here, I pay more tax here. But when we spend our money with TerraCare, it's gone. It's out of our community. And yeah, they might stop by a candy bar, Coke, or coffee here at 7-Eleven, but it ain't doing much for our tax structure. So I wish before you guys would vote on this, that you would look at this proposal that me and Kurt put together.
Can I ask you while you're much hand it up to give it to Phyllis and we can pass it around? So what happened in 2006 and 2007 then?
In 2006 and 2007, we had a 2-foot snowstorm on about the 28th of December, and we had another one on the 4th or 5th of January, and we had an 80-mile-an-hour windstorm that blowed the snow, it leveled across McCaslin. You couldn't see the dip at all. It was blowed straight across.
But did that come up with that's about $200,000 delta between the two contracts?
On
I'm being. So that seems like a lot of money for the storms.
Well, when we were out there with 6 loaders, snow blowers, and 10 or 12 trucks, we had our streets cleaned up and everybody could get out of their cul-de-sacs in 3 days. And we're talking all 3 sections of town, not just the middle section or just the north or the south side. We put a lot of equipment to work. I have that much equipment in my yard. I mean, I don't have to go rent equipment if we get a cat storm. I have plenty in my yard. If I break down, I don't have to fix my loader. I just go get another one. And it's for service to the people of the town. But I wish you would sure look at that, because $192,000 is a lot of money to save. Although it's only just a little under $50,000 a year, the $50,000 is $50,000, and that's with unlimited truck time. Truck's got to be out there. Who cares how many hours? So, and the response time of 30 minutes is not a problem, none whatsoever. No backup, no balk. Let's go to work.
Okay.
So I wish the board would consider this.
All right. Thank you.
So I'd like to clarify some of that. I always reach out to everybody in this community, and we did have a good conversation, and we did look at some of these numbers. I think those numbers are, and I'll stay honest, Mr. Kuffner's here. I think some of those numbers are variable costs. That type of proposal is an open book type of proposal, and that we would see everything. It wasn't just an hourly rate. If there were repairs, we would have an open book arrangement on those repairs. That some of that savings was built off of the last few years being around $230,000 with TerraCare. So there's a lot of variables there. I felt at the end of the day that the savings compared to the performance we're getting from TerraCare and the multi-year contracts was at a point where we need to uphold our existing contract to the end of its 4 years. And then we'll rebid, and if at that point in time it's still that cheap, then that would be a good value to our local contractor. I've thought hard about this because this has been an ongoing dialogue. And I think it comes down to the integrity of our contracts. And if we put a contract out there and someone gets awarded that as a low bid, and then the next year someone walks in the door and says, I can do it cheaper, well, then we need to go to a system where we bid it every year. But I don't know that that necessarily protects our local contractors as well. So my understanding after looking at that, and I'd be happy to go through the numbers with all of you. I don't have that in front of me with Mr. Kuffner or not, but it's highly variable. It was a $20,000 to $30,000 savings, but it was variable on snowfall. If you get less snow, that savings is a lot less. If there's a lot of repairs, that savings is a lot less. The conversation started from an original conversation after our debriefing, and that Mr. Kuffner's equipment was all paid for. And what I said to him was, I feel you could provide the town a tremendous value if you really wanted to, and you really want to be the local contractor. And as we had our conversations, that proposal grew into a larger amount than where it started, and I don't think any of the costs in there are invalid. However, it gets pretty close to TerraCare.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep. Can I ask Kurt one question? In your opinion, you said that Mr. Kuffner's bid consists of variable costs that potentially could actually go up more. Is that what you're saying?
It was all that was based off of open book numbers, actual costs. Actual costs. If you needed to repair a plow or replace a transmission or costs like that, that would be an open book variable cost. And I think we estimated a cost in there of $10,000 or $15,000 for that. So that proposal it's not a firm cost. It's not a firm savings. And I just want to be clear, Mr. Randall was open to the conversation, and what he said was what every town manager should say. At this cost, this needs to be put out to bid. There was nothing personal here. This is all about business and integrity of our contracts.
Okay. Thanks. Trustee Williams.
So let me ask you this. With TerraCare on the snow plowing for the general fund and SMED, that $223,000 is hard cost, right? That's a fixed cost.
That is
not a fixed cost.
That is based off the $171,000 equipment retainer, and then we have an unlimited number of hours. We pay at $58 per hour. So if we plow 100 hours for the course of the snow season, we pay $5,800 on top of the $171. So that is variable by the hourly rate.
depending on how many hours we end up using.
Correct.
So the 223,000 could go up or down.
It could go up. I think last year we were about 230, 233. That was a heavy snowfall year. I think we discussed that the average was around 70, and we estimated 100 inches, 70 inches, and we estimated 100 inches last year. So most likely that cost will go down in an average year. So
And that 200 hours is like $10,000.
So,
yeah, yeah.
all right, so let me ask this another way, because I'm not understanding very well. The variable cost is the man hours.
It is.
Any other variable cost?
No other variable costs on that contract.
So if their snow plow breaks down 20 times or once,
That's their problem.
that's their problem,
It is.
not ours.
It is. In addition, we've negotiated the standby rate previous to talking with our local contractor at $35 an hour. So we may even see more reduction from last year, because there were times we had several trucks on the road in advance of a storm and we were paying $58 an hour. Now we may be paying $35 an hour.
So is fuel a variable cost in this?
No.
TerraCare has no variable costs other than man hours.
So if they use more fuel in a season, it's not our problem, it's their problem.
Exactly.
Okay.
Which is completely different from the initial proposal we were discussing with Superior Maintenance.
And so can I ask you on this proposal that we have from Superior Maintenance, are any of these costs variable? Like there's total overhead of $181,000 roughly. Is there anything in that is variable?
Fuel could be variable. That's an estimate. It's clearly stated. Equipment insurance, 3 trucks would not be variable. Annual contractor incorporation fees, not variable. Equipment retainer. Initial equipment retainer and monthly equipment retainer was an estimate. What I came to understand through discussions was Superior Maintenance would have liked to buy 2 used trucks, but trucks adequate to what we need as part of this contract. So that would have been an open book, but not variable. So fuel would be variable. I think, one area where I see a disconnect is we're trying to compare apples to apples, 3 trucks, 1 loader. But when we revisit and we discuss history, we have 10 or 12 trucks out on the road and 6 loaders or whatever. And, if that's what we want to pay for, then we can do that. But I have to evaluate these contracts and their performance based off 3 trucks and 1 loader. So I didn't see a significant difference. It was a variable savings. I didn't see a significant enough difference to break the integrity of the contract we have based off the performance we got.
Thanks, that helps.
Trustee Pennington and Trustee Gurgurus.
But getting back to the morphing of the TerraCare contract, in essence, they're involved in a process of rebidding that contract within the context of the contract. Certainly, they're trying to keep themselves ultimately competitive by giving roughly 600 hours away, quote, free, unquote. Used to be paid hours, it's unpaid hours next year. So we're allowing them to rebid within the context of this up to 4-year term of the contract.
We have
And-
negotiated the contract to the benefit of the town.
I agree. It is to the benefit of the town, but it is also to the benefit of TerraCare in terms of keeping it that much more competitive against the other potential, their competition.
Sure.
So you see my yin and yang here?
I do. I think you have to look at the 2008 costs. They were well ahead of the pack already. and they do give us a contract that is essentially continuing to be cheaper. They're already well ahead of the pack. They were well ahead of Superior Maintenance. In fact, I would say that Superior Maintenance would not have an argument based off bid numbers unless I had even put my hand out there to say, hey, I hear you as a local contractor. You know, what can you do for your town? I'll talk with you because I want to be that type of public works director. However, I also have to maintain the balance for all the other contracts. Because if we break our integrity, then we're going to not have as many people bidding our contracts.
I'm hearing you, Kurt, but I also can hold TerraCare to the fire equally, saying, hey, in '08, they were at $435K, and somehow by '09, they were able to drop $200,000 out of it.
Isn't that half and
No.
half?
No, that's half and half.
Half.
That wasn't them.
It was 600
They
and
were
200.
hired in May of
TerraCare's
08.
averaged 225 to 230.
Okay,
Yeah.
I stand corrected.
Yeah,
Okay.
that increase is from the previous contract,
Okay.
the last half of 2007, or first part.
Well,
of
let me go to then correct myself. What they have done is at roughly that 225, 230 range, they've then doubled or even further the hours that they're willing to throw at it and still stay at 225 or 230. So let's say this next year they need 1,150 hours. They're willing to throw that in at the same rate that in '09 they threw in 600 hours, or they expended 600 hours. So within the terms of the contract, they're doubling what they're willing to invest in this contract in terms of man-hours.
Yeah, I mean, double in the terms of hours, yes.
Okay.
In the overall scheme of thing, they're giving up chunks of 10 or 20, maybe 1,000.
Right.
Trustee Gregos?
So, we're putting you through the ring.
Yeah,
right now,
I've initiated
and-
this
no, and
conversations.
yeah.
I'm a transparent guy.
No, I know, and
And you're doing great.
you're doing great. I just want to say, you're getting thrown a lot of different questions about an important contract that has local implications as well. A year from now, Derek here would have been our vendor for 3 years, right? Will this go out to bid or not for another year?
Depends.
I don't think that's a fair question until you
It's
see the
not.
performance.
Assuming they do.
No,
the
no,
job
I'm
they did
assuming
last
that they
year, probably
continue
not.
doing the job just like they did the first 2 years. Just you're satisfied with that. Would you open up a year from now, or would you to other
Do
vendors
the
or not?
4-year, or do the 4-year normal.
That's exactly what I'm asking, yes.
I'd recommend to stay within our 4-year rhythm.
Okay.
If someone's performing, how do you determine that they didn't perform good enough?
No, I'm just asking for clarifications. You don't have to defend.
Sure,
I just want to know,
sure.
this is information. I just
Yeah.
want to know what you're thinking. Okay.
Other questions? Trustee Schoolmans?
Well, and I guess the way I look at it is, I think it can be considered a renegotiation, but the way I was looking at it is they agreed to make us happier for the same money, or do more service for us for the same money, and I think that maybe that's a renegotiation to me. It's
Good business?
yes, there you go.
The way our contracts read, we have to get approval if we increase the budgetary impact. They've done nothing but decrease the budgetary impact.
Other questions? Other public comment? Comments from the board?
Yeah, just one last question. I'm sorry to beat a dead horse. To dovetail Sandy's comment, that we, in a way, we gave them a purchasing preference by allowing them to come back and reduce their bid. And we didn't give that opportunity to the local vendor. And if they do the same job this year and next year and we award them for 4 years, great. But I certainly hope that we will take the time to sit down with our local vendor, and if they honestly can do the job, then I say we entertain that. We really have to.
I think it was, I'm not going to deny any apparent savings, but the two contracts are structured differently. The contract or proposal that Superior Maintenance and I discussed was an open book agreement, an open book with no maximum. So there's risk. There is a risk, and when we get within $20,000 or $30,000, that comes down to number of repairs, fuel, and inches of snow. And so it gets close enough for me where I can't tell you that I can guarantee you a savings to make it worth breaking the integrity of our contract. And so that's where I stand, and I say that because when we rebid this, or we're required to rebid this, it would be great if the local contractor got this contract. And I don't want to have to stand here and defend what he's doing, his great performance, and his low cost, and his ongoing negotiations for lower costs, because I've had outside contractors approach me and say, "Your local guy, he's pricey, and I can beat him, and I'm gonna call the board." I just don't want to be in these situations.
Why don't you go to George Kupner then and entertain this option if you really had no intention to do it?
I entertained the option based off the original conversation that he had equipment in the yard that could do the task. And in my mind, we could have significantly reduced an equipment retainer, among other things. And in my mind, we had a significant savings we could possibly discuss. That wasn't the discussion that took place, and therefore it got close enough where I didn't feel like I could recommend a guaranteed savings that puts us that provides the integrity we should have with our contracts. And I think we have to be careful with this because, again, when we have local contractors that have our contracts, we don't want to have to solicit outside contractors that are trying to undercut our local contract. You know what I'm
That last phrase.
Yeah,
I'm a
I
little confused by
understand what I
you
said.
Yeah. Might say
I
that
just
over
don't want to
again,
put
more clearly.
any of our multiple-year contracts at risk if they're performing. I don't want to break that integrity. If we're gonna open up solicitation, then let's rebid it every year.
Let me suggest that perhaps what should be done, and maybe what you did do, is see what's going on in the market to know whether there should be substantial change in pricing, even if we have a valid contract going. I mean, that should go on every time you have an option that you're going to exercise. But, I don't like what we're talking about tonight, a last-minute unsolicited proposal that could have come in any time. And this isn't a way to do business. I personally don't like it. And I'll say this again, if we're going to have local purchasing preferences, let's study it and let's implement something that makes sense, but let's not do it by the seat of our pants, because what's local, what's a preference, how do you figure it out? I've lived with those a whole career. That's not easy, and it's not always good. So,
Testing the market is a good phrase.
yeah.
And that's exactly what I felt I was doing. We do that with construction costs. Unit pricing, we call other contractors, so we do test the market.
Additional questions, comments from the board?
Well, I'll make a comment. It's the comment that I think I made last go-around, which is Superior Maintenance does outstanding job in plowing our streets. There was never a quality issue. They kept the streets open. During bad times, they did a great job. So it's never been a performance issue, at least in my mind. I suspect most of the board as well. But at the end of the day, if we can get similar, I mean, I won't say it's exact, but similar performance at a greatly decreased rate, I would have a very hard time recommending moving in a different direction until the 4-year timeline is up. So I guess that's where I'm at. So, Justice comments?
While I'm here. And I think we tried 2 years in a row to see if we could get that change in cost addressed, and it didn't happen. And so I think we made the sensible decision, which was to go ahead with the lower bid contract. We kept it 1 year to see if they could actually perform for the money. They did. I think we need to honor that.
And I think that by doing this, we've saved, $500,000 over the course of a couple of years. So that's my perspective. Trustee Williams?
And in my opinion, I feel that we need to be able to keep it within budget and have an idea of how much it would range in and be able to control the costs. That is incredibly important to me, as well as quality, the quality of work. And I think we have both of those at this time. When we go out to bid in 4 years, if we can get the same thing and have a local company do that same kind of contract where there isn't a lot of variables, where the costs could go up, then I see no reason why not to award that to someone local. And I certainly, we talked about it recently, about the local preference policies, and we certainly can look into that, and we can make the rules for that. It doesn't have to be, extremely local and only Superior. It can be surrounding communities. But I think that I don't want to run this at the last minute. I'd rather see something well-researched if we're going to go that route. But I think this is fair. I appreciate that you met with Superior Maintenance and that you made an effort to see cost comparison so that we can at least see what's out there. And in 4 years, I look forward to seeing all the bids.
Trustee Gregorius.
I just have to agree with Trustee Sorelli that we can't do this at the last minute. I believe that if we have had this discussion originally, just like Trustee Williams said, and it's great to have local vendors and to have businesses stay local as much as we can, but we have to have a process that's clearly understood, completely transparent. So we're never ever accused about anything, that there are deals happening behind closed doors.
Sure.
I would not want that in my conscience, and I know Trustee, nobody else would here as well. So if in 2012, it goes out to bid, apples to apples, not apples to apple, the oranges, but truly apples to apples, and they come exactly the same, then we have a decision as a board to make, and hopefully by then we would have a process in place already to award. But I think until then, I would not feel comfortable breaking the commitment we have with the contract that we have now. So thanks for presenting it and hanging in there. So.
Sure. Additional comments regarding this issue? None, I'll entertain a motion. Trustee Skumatz?
I'd like to move Town of Superior Resolution Number R-46, Series 2010, a resolution of the Board of Trustees of the Town of Superior approving an agreement with TerraCare Associates for snow and ice control services.
There's a motion by Trustee Skumatz. Is there a second? Trustee Gregorius, further discussion?
I have a question. I guess as process, Trustee Skumatz made a number of suggestions which will be part of concluding the negotiation for this contract as far as measures.
I want to make sure we separate performance requirements, which are in a contract, versus the measures, by the way we measure.
Right.
So we will measure those suggested, those
They're kind of internal.
knowledge indicators, but they are internal, yes.
Okay, I just wanted to
Okay, thanks.
understand
Appreciate that.
whether we were doing anything with that or not.
Okay. There's a motion and a second. Further discussion? Seeing none. Phyllis?
Skumatz.
Aye.
Pennington.
Aye.
Muckle.
Yes.
Hanson.
No.
Gregorius.
Yes.
Sorelli.
Yes.
Williams.
Yes.
Okay, that motion carries. Thank you. With that, it brings us to the end of our meeting, unless there's anything else to come before the board this evening. Mr. Randall, anybody else? Seeing none, meeting adjourned. Thank you.